Chapter 1066. Actually, there's another important reason why I was able to stay alive. It's because Night made too much noise and attracted the attention of the Dragon Tribe and the Phoenix Tribe. The people of the 6 tribes didn't do anything to her because they were afraid of her. They even gave her the title of God of the Underworld. But it's impossible for her to be treated well. Not only did she not get a territory, she didn't even get a place to live. Granny Yen turned around and pointed at the grave on the other side. Although my old man has been conferred the title of Moon God, he's actually not well received in the tribe. Ming was randomly assigned to stay here with me and my wife, and he'll suffer the disdain of others together with us. Yu Qianqiu was surprised and said, "You are also from the 6 tribes of the realm of gods?" "Yes. We are the descendants of the ancient god of light." When Granny Yen said this, a sarcastic expression flashed across her face. It seemed that she didn't want to have too much to do with that tribe. She changed the topic and continued, "After dark came here, we were all ignored and looked down upon. Maybe it's because we share the same fate, we got along very well. After that, Dark lived in seclusion and almost didn't show up in the outside world. She used a meditation method to transform the dead fetus in her belly into a ghost fetus and continued to be pregnant. Although the fetus grew up very slowly, it was indeed a kind of magical technique. The 3 looked at each other and didn't expect such a magical thing. Needless to say, they knew that the ghost fetus in Dark's belly was Taishu Xian, the current underworld saintess. This must be the strange birth of Taishu Xian, who was born with the underworld body that Granny Yen mentioned before. Time flies. In the blink of an eye, 1,000 years have passed. Little Xian, who was born with the underworld body, was finally born. It was a happy event in the Cold Moon Palace. However, the birth of Xian Lass seemed to herald the arrival of a bloody storm in the god realm. When Xian Lass was just able to walk, Ming, who had never left the Moon Palace, took Xian Lass out of the Moon Palace for the first time for her daughter's sake. She wanted to let Xian Lass experience the outside world. At that time, I accompanied her. However, as soon as I went out, I got into big trouble because of Dark's beauty. In a beautiful place, Ming saw that there were few people around, so she removed the veil that covered her face so that it would be easier for her to play with her daughter. Who knew that she would bump into the descendant of the ancient light god, Qingyang, passing by with a group of people? When Qingyang first saw Ming's appearance, he was stunned. He actually said that he wanted Ming to be his concubine. We obviously wouldn't agree. We also knew that we weren't their match, so we could only run for our lives. Just as we were being chased by them to the point where we had nowhere to run, we suddenly saw a murderous aura in the distant sky. Black demonic clouds blotted out the sky and covered the earth as they surged over. Such a powerful aura stunned us and our pursuers. We even thought that an ancient god was passing by. Only Ming stared at the sky and gnashed his teeth as he said, "He's here." At first, I didn't understand what she meant. I saw a man standing in the demonic clouds in the sky. His entire body was covered by a black waistcoat. A fierce and austere aura surged out from his body and filled the heaven and earth. It made people shudder. One of his hands reached out from the waistcoat, and there was a black crystal ball in his palm. He looked down coldly and said, "Ming, I felt your fear, so I came out of seclusion in advance. Tell me, who made you so afraid?" Granny Yan's eyes were confused. She sank into endless memories. She said with an abnormally complicated expression, after hearing this, "Although I haven't seen Night before, I immediately guessed that this person was him." Qingyang, whose interest was disturbed, immediately asked who he was. Night replied indifferently, "I'm a demonic god." Qingyang asked the people around him who the demonic god was, but they all said that they had never heard of him. In reality, Night really wasn't conferred the title of demon god back then. Qingyang asked him who it was that gave him the title of demon god, but Night said that no one else had the right to confer the title on him. He was the one who gave it to himself. That made Qingyang and the others laugh aloud. Without a doubt, they relaxed after learning that Night had no background. Qingyang's lackeys immediately used the ancient god of light as a background and told Night to piss off and stop disturbing their hunt. After learning that Qingyang wanted Ming to be his concubine, Night's demonic nature was immediately triggered. A huge hand reached out from the demonic clouds beneath his feet and grabbed Qingyang into the clouds effortlessly. The others wanted to save Qingyang, but they were all instantly reduced to dust by the huge hand condensed from the roiling demonic clouds beneath Night's feet. They could not even fight back at all. The one who suffered the most was Qingyang. Who knows what he did to him, but he was bound by the demonic clouds beneath Night's feet. Not only was he unable to break free, but his flesh and blood were also devoured by the vicious, sharp-toothed ghost heads conjured by the demonic clouds. Qingyang's miserable cries under Night's feet were ear-piercing. He no longer looked like a human. He had basically gone through all kinds of torture. Night said that he wanted to make Qingyang suffer a fate worse than death. He wanted to suffer the demon devouring for all eternity under his feet, never to be reborn. Before long, the weather and the surroundings changed. Night looked at the surging clouds and said that his presence had already alarmed quite a few experts. Someone was hurrying over, so he told us to retreat for now. Meanwhile, he wanted to bathe the god world in blood for revenge from 1,000 years ago. Back then, I was so shocked by his demonic flames that I did not even dare to breathe loudly. Ming had no intention of saying anything else to him, so we quickly left. However, not long after we left, we suddenly heard Night's voice ripple through the god world. His tone was abnormally domineering and cold. I, demon god Night, have returned. All those who hunted me 1,000 years ago will die. All those who hunted me 1,000 years ago will be wiped out. From today onwards, I will bathe the entire god world in blood. From today onwards, the god world will no longer need the 6 great races. The 6 ancient gods will all die. They will use their lives to pay for your years of greed. From today onwards, I, demon god Night, will put an end to everything. Light, your descendant Qingyang is begging for mercy under my feet. Why are you still cowardly and cowardly? Could it be that you don't dare to come out and fight me? When Yu Qianqiu and the others heard this, they all sucked in a breath of cold air. This demon god's tone was a little too arrogant. He actually wanted to go against the 6 great races led by the 6 ancient gods. He even said that he wanted to bathe the entire god world in blood. He was too arrogant. Night's undisguised and deliberate words immediately shocked the entire god realm, and the curtains of a bloody battle were drawn. After that, we found out that the current Night was no longer the same as before. His demonic arts could be said to be omnipotent. He waited for the experts of the god world to gather at the place where he saved us. He did not run or avoid the battle. In that battle, he slaughtered hundreds of thousands of people from the 6 clans. Their corpses piled up like a mountain. He stood at the peak of that mountain of corpses and sea of blood. Under his feet, there was Qingyang, who was neither human nor ghost, screaming miserably day in and day out. Yu Qianqiu and the others were speechless. They imagined the scene at that time. How tall would it be when the corpses of hundreds of thousands of people were piled up? In the end, the experts of the 6 clans were killed to the point that they did not dare to come close. Night no longer needed anyone to confer him the title of demon god. Just the fact that he stood at the peak of the mountain of corpses and sea of blood without anyone daring to touch him was enough to make his name resound throughout the god world. Just as he said, no one was qualified to confer him the title of god. The 6 ancient gods never thought that the current Night would actually be so ferocious. Unless they personally took action, no one would be able to deal with this great evil. In the end, the ancient god Light was the first to lose his cool. Regardless of whether he had feelings for Qingyang or not, Qingyang was still his descendant. Now that he was being trampled by Night day and night, it was no different from a slap to his face. He had no choice but to save him. The ancient god of Light finally took action. Originally, everyone thought that Night was dead for sure this time, but in the end, everyone's jaws dropped. The ancient god of Light was actually forced to flee by Night, and luckily managed to escape with his life. Night left the mountain of corpses and sea of blood and chased after the ancient god of light. Although he managed to escape, he barged into the territory of the ancient god of light. He killed everyone on sight, regardless of gender or age. He massacred the descendants of the ancient god of light, but the ancient god of light did not dare to show himself to protect his own. With that, the title of demon god stood at the peak of the god world. With that, the 6 ancient gods could no longer sit still. They all regretted provoking this great evil. If the demon god only dealt with the Light Clan, the others might have been intimidated by the demon god's methods and ignored him. However, the demon god had already spread the word that he wanted to deal with everyone in the 6 ancient gods. He wanted to massacre them all. With the cooperation of the ancient god of light, the scene of the 6 ancient gods working together to fight the enemy appeared for the first time. They trapped the demon god who was wantonly slaughtering people in the god world. The demon god did not run or hide, and took the battle head-on. A fierce battle that changed the color of the sky and made the sun and moon lose their light made the entire god world tremble. Yu Qianqiu swallowed with difficulty. His Adam's apple vibrated as he said, "What happened in the end?" Cangyun Xian and Xin Yu were confused. Of the 6 ancient gods, 2 were killed and 4 were injured. The demon god himself was also seriously injured. However, the remaining 4 ancient gods, including the ancient god of light, were chased by the demon god all over the god world. It seemed like the demon god would not stop until he killed them. Wherever he went, he would kill anyone he saw. His ferocity was simply hair-raising. In the end, the 4 ancient gods who could no longer fight were forced to flee into the territories of the coiling dragon god and the phoenix god respectively to seek help. I don't know if the 2 ancient gods who never participated in any battles helped them. However, after the demon god chased them into the territories of the 2 ancient gods, no one knew what was happening inside. When the demon god came out again, the 4 ancient gods also came out with their tails between their legs. The 5 of them went their separate ways and seemed to have resolved the battle between them. Therefore, some people guessed that the coiling dragon god and the phoenix god joined forces with the 4 ancient gods to suppress the demon god. Others said that it was the mysterious Tao who resolved the battle between the 5 of them. However, none of the people involved were willing to mention this matter. In short, no matter what the truth is, the demon god had already become the #1 expert in the god world in everyone's hearts by defeating 6 ancient gods alone. Chapter 1067. This result made the 3 of them sigh endlessly. Yu Qianqiu even felt his scalp go numb. He couldn't help but think of the pair of cold and ruthless eyes he saw in the sky above the Lingfang Valley. When he thought that Yan Zhuixing had such a powerful person behind him, he immediately felt extremely pressured. He didn't know whether it would be a blessing or a disaster in the end. How did it end up like this? Yu Qianqiu pointed at the graves on both sides, especially the grave of the moon god, and asked, "I can understand that Tai Shu Jing died a long time ago. Could it be that the moon god also participated in the battle against the demon god?" A miserable look flashed across Grandma Yan's face. She shook her head and said, "After the demon god defeated the 6 ancient gods, he came to the moon palace to look for Dark. When he heard the babbling Xian girl calling Dark mother, his expression changed drastically. He didn't expect that Dark could make a dead fetus become a ghost fetus. He thought that it was a child that Dark had with another man. So he immediately questioned Dark, whose child was it? In order to anger him, Dark admitted that it was a child that she had with another man. Of course, she was also afraid that he wouldn't let go of the child after hearing that it was Zheng's daughter. The demon god knight was so angry that he laughed. He angrily scolded Dark for being shameless and Zheng dying for her. Then he asked which man's bastard child was it. Seeing that Dark didn't answer, his eyes immediately locked on the man standing beside her, who was my husband, the moon god. He thought that my husband was the man who had an affair with Dark. In a rage, he attacked. Just think, how could my husband be a match for him? He died in his hands unjustly. Even if we wanted to save him, we couldn't do it in time. Until the demon god knight also wanted to kill Xian girl, Dark had no choice but to tell him about Xian girl's identity. If he wanted to kill them, he should kill them both. I don't know why, but after the demon god knight knew that Xian girl was Zhang's daughter, he didn't kill her. He just glanced at Xian girl a few more times before leaving. After that, Dark kept apologizing to me and kept apologizing. Then, the Phoenix clan sent a decree saying that the mausoleum of the god of sin, where only gods were buried, would be opened. Those who died in this disaster could be buried in the mausoleum of the god of sin. When I was disheartened and prepared to stay with my man in the mausoleum of the god of sin forever, Dark came to me with Xian. She entrusted Xian and Taishu Zhang's bodies to me and asked me to bring them to the mausoleum of the god of sin together. She said that she would give her man and my man an explanation. To be honest, I hated her at that time. After all, my man died because of her. After I accepted Xian and Taishu Zhang's corpses, I secretly followed her to see how she was going to explain to her man and my man. In the end, I saw her self-destruct in front of the demon god knight, intending to perish together with the demon god. That earth-shattering bang completely woke me up from my hatred. However, the demon god knight's demonic power was too strong. Dark self-destruction did not cause any damage to him. After the smoke dissipated, the demon god knight knelt at the place where Dark had self-destructed with a dispirited look. He was bleeding from his 7 apertures and howling endlessly. It was almost unbearable to look at. I wanted to wait for the demon god knight to leave, then take Xian to the place where her mother died for the last time. Then, would take her away to the mausoleum of the god of sin and never come back. Unexpectedly, the demon god knight knelt there and howled for more than 3 days and 3 nights. I didn't dare to stay any longer. I was afraid that he would cause trouble for Xian when he woke up, so I took her to the mausoleum of the god of sin. It was not until the mausoleum of the god of sin was sealed again that I felt relieved. Then, for so many years, I had been guarding the mausoleum with Xian. Who would have thought that Xian would keep asking me about her parents after she grew up? I wanted to hide it from her for the rest of her life. But one time, after she kept asking me, I thought that she would not be able to leave this place anyway, so I told her everything. However, not even in my wildest dreams could I have imagined that she would predict that there would come a time when the barrier of heavens would be lenient. After that, she left behind a jade archive, saying that she wanted to avenge her parents. Then, she quietly left. I still regret this to this day. After listening to this dispute involving the high and mighty gods, the 3 of them fell silent. Who could say who was right and who was wrong? Even though the demon god was infamous for killing countless innocent people, who could say that he was the only one at fault? Time flew by like a fleeting cloud. The countless joys and sorrows brought about by the dispute between the gods might just be the beginning of a never-ending process. Granny, you don't need to feel guilty. Now, Taishu Xian is living a good life in the netherworld. She wants to seek revenge on the demon god. To put it bluntly, I'm afraid that she doesn't even have the chance to come into contact with the demon god. How can she seek revenge? Yu Qianqiu sighed and comforted her. Knowing that these grudges would not affect Bai Suzhen's cultivation of the Myriad Demon's Heart Sutra, he felt a lot more at ease. After listening to these grudges that involved the heavenly realm, he also felt that there was no meaning in fighting and killing. But this was a cultivation path that could never be turned back once one set foot in it. If one did not actively prepare for it, one might suffer unbearable pain in the future. One could only continue on this path, there was no way to avoid it. I hope so. But the world is full of misfortunes, and no one can be certain. Grandma Yan looked at Yu Qianqiu with a gentle gaze and smiled faintly. I have told you everything that needs to be said. Since you and Xian are close friends, then do me a favor. Help me persuade her to come back after you leave this place. What a joke. She is the underworld saintess. How am I qualified to persuade her? I'm afraid it will be difficult for me to even see her. Yu Qianqiu coughed awkwardly and said, Grandma. In my opinion, let's just let nature take its course. If she wants to come back, she will naturally come back. If she doesn't want to come back, even if you catch her and bring her back. As he spoke, he looked at Jiu Yu and continued, unless you keep an eye on her all the time, she will still find a way to get out. Jiu Yu looked at Grandma Yen with trepidation after hearing his words. He could enter and exit the barrier of heavens at will. If Grandma Yen used him to find Taishu Xian, would she kill him to stop Taishu Xian from leaving this place again? After pondering for a while, Grandma Yen nodded slightly and said, "You are right. Maybe when she is really tired outside, she will naturally come back. Otherwise, if her heart is outside, even if I forcibly catch her back, it will be no different from torture to her. A person who cannot calm down will not be able to stay here forever." Yu Qianqiu heaved a sigh of relief and cupped his hands at her. "Don't worry, Grandma. If I see her, I will definitely tell her that you miss her very much." He was about to bid farewell. Grandma Yen smiled and nodded. "Okay. I won't see you off. I hope you can find the person you are looking for. Goodbye." Yu Qianqiu bowed and flashed to the flying shuttle. Grey Cloud Xian and Jiu Yu also bowed and bid farewell. Then, under Grandma Yan's nod and smile, the flying shuttle flew away. The flying shuttle traveled southward under the bright moonlight. From time to time, the gazes of the three people swept across the vast land where the gods were buried. They were all silent. Their minds could not help but return to the grudges of the gods that Grandma Yen had told them. For a moment, they felt so small. After a long time, Yu Qianqiu suddenly asked, "Jiu Yu, do you know where that old Meng is?" "I don't know." Jiu Yu shook his head and continued to explain. "However, most of the tombs here are buried in the center of the cemetery. There are very few people like Granny Yen who have their tombs buried close to the celestial boundary formation. If I see a tomb along the way to the south, it should be the tomb of old Meng." "Damn it. Why didn't you say so earlier? If I knew you didn't know, I would have asked Grandma Yen." Yu Qianqiu said gloomily. "Yu Qianqiu, it seems that you have a lot of secrets." Grey Cloud Xian suddenly spoke. He turned back to look at Yu Qianqiu and sneered. "You really seem to know the underworld saintess. What I'm curious about is, when have you seen the underworld saintess?" "I refuse to answer." Yu Qianqiu retorted without hesitation. Grey Cloud Xian choked and was speechless. Little did he know that Yu Qianqiu was already thinking about how he knew too many secrets. Because he had killed his grandson, it was impossible for him to reconcile with him. Therefore, he was thinking about how to get rid of him. After flying in silence for a whole day, the three of them stood on the flying shuttle and stared in three different directions. Suddenly, there was a loud boom in front of them. They could feel the ground shaking in the air. There were experts fighting. The flying shuttle suddenly stopped. The three of them looked at each other and suddenly heard someone shouting angrily in the distance. "Old thief! Don't run if you have the guts." Yu Qianqiu's eyelids twitched and he said in a deep voice, "Let's go. Let's go and take a look." The other two also vaguely guessed something. Grey Cloud Xian hesitated for a while, but he still drove the flying shuttle in the direction of the battle. Not long after, the three of them saw that under the silvery moonlight, there were huge potholes everywhere. In front of them, there was a hill that was miraculously preserved. They could vaguely see a tomb that was exactly the same as the one they saw at Grandma Yan's. At the top of the hill, there was a stone house built on the slope. Although it was simple, it was slightly more majestic than Grandma Yan's stone house. Apart from the hill, the surrounding areas had indeed been destroyed to the point of being unrecognizable. Grey Cloud Xian drove the flying shuttle and maintained a distance, not daring to approach. What a joke. They did not know this person. Moreover, the angry shout just now was filled with sparks of gunpowder. The other party was so angry, how could they trespass on his territory? "May I ask if this is Senior Meng's residence?" Yu Qianqiu shouted in the direction of the hill. In the end, there was no response even after shouting a few times. The three of them looked at each other and reckoned that the person should have left. Perhaps, he went to chase after someone. At this moment, a stream of light appeared in front of them in the blink of an eye. The speed was so fast that it gave the three of them a fright. A gray-robed old man with his hair tied up in a slanted bun appeared. He looked at the three of them angrily and asked with a choking voice, "Who are you? Why did you trespass here?" Chapter 1068. Seeing that the other party's hair was crooked from anger, the three of them looked at each other. They were almost certain that this was Old Man Meng, who was annoyed by the harassment. Yu Qianqiu cupped his hands and said, "May I ask if you are Senior Meng?" Seeing that the other party actually knew who he was, the old man's angry expression eased a little, and he said in a deep voice, "That's me." "What's the matter?" Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up, and he chuckled and said, "We were introduced by Grandma Yen from the north. We heard that Senior Meng encountered some trouble, so Grandma Yen asked us to come and see if there's anything we can help with." "Grandma Yen introduced you?" Old Man Meng was stunned, and he immediately checked the cultivation of the three of them. As a result, the corner of his mouth curled up into a disdainful sneer, as if to say, how could the three of them be of any help with their cultivation? He took out a jade talisman, and after entering a spell into it, he crushed the jade talisman into powder. The three of them understood that the other party was obviously doubting the authenticity of their identity, and he might even be verifying it with Grandma Yen. The three of them could not help but feel lucky that they had a good relationship with Grandma Yen, and it should not ruin their business. After a while, Old Man Meng looked at the three of them and nodded slightly, "All right. I'm annoyed by that old thief. The three of you can act as hidden sentries at the edge of the all-heavens boundary. When you see him, immediately send me a message, lest I lose sight of him." As he spoke, he took out another 3 jade talismans and flicked them into the hands of the three of them. "Sure." Yu Qianqiu put away the jade talismans generously, and then asked with a trace of suspicion, "I heard from Grandma Yen that that person wants to rob the tomb of the god of sin guarded by Senior. May I ask Senior, why does he want to rob the tomb? Could it be that there are some treasures hidden in the tomb?" At the mention of this, Old Man Meng's face suddenly collapsed, and he said with a hideous expression, "I've met a madman. At first, I thought he wanted to rob the tomb, but later on, I understood that he was using me to practice and improve his cultivation. Every time I chased him away, I found that his cultivation had increased a little when I fought him again. The speed at which his cultivation increased was monstrous. If this continues, I'll sooner or later be defeated by him. I must seize the opportunity to eliminate him before he becomes powerful, otherwise, I'll definitely be humiliated one day. It's truly infuriating." Sigh. It was like Old Man Bai's style. Yu Qianqiu's face twitched. He smiled awkwardly and said, "Since Senior knows the reason, why did you still fight with him? If you don't fight with him, he won't have the chance to improve his cultivation. You think I want to fight him? If I liked fighting and killing, would I have come to the mausoleum of the god of sin to guard the tomb? The key is that if I don't fight with him, that madman will really dig up the tomb. Even if I can watch him dig up the tomb and not do anything, if you don't fight with him, he'll take the initiative to attack you. Am I supposed to just stand there and let him beat me?" Old Man Meng roared like a madman. Even though he was a few meters away, his spittle was almost splattered all over the faces of the three of them. The bun on the back of his head swayed back and forth in anger. It seemed like he was about to break down from the torture. After spitting, he seemed to have realized that there was no need to lose his temper with the three of them. He waved his hand and pointed in the direction of the all-heavens boundary, saying, "The three of you, split up and guard the edge of the all-heavens boundary. Once you find that green-robed old thief, immediately send a message to me." "Okay. We'll go now." Yu Qianqiu called out to his companions, and Enrich immediately flew in the direction of the all-heavens boundary on the flying shuttle. The huge moon hung high in the sky, and the bright moonlight shone on the earth as tranquil as water. After getting away from Old Man Meng, Enrich couldn't help but ask, "Yu Qianqiu, why are you looking for that person? Could it be that you really want to help Old Man Meng take care of that person? You have to think this through. Even with Old Man Meng's cultivation, he's a headache. He's not someone we can afford to provoke." Shen Yu nodded in agreement. "What a joke. We're looking for him, not provoking him. Yu Qianqiu snickered. Finding Old Man Meng first was just to confirm how to find that person. Now that we have a way, we'll leave this place immediately after we find that person. We won't meet Old Man Meng again, so there's no need to worry too much. But I still have to stay here in the future. Shen Yu mumbled weakly. However, he had no human rights, and no one responded to his words. He looked miserable. Yu Qianqiu, who was standing silently on the flying shuttle, would look at the surroundings from time to time. He often wondered what was so strange about the mausoleum of the god of sin that could block his ability to sense the silver balls that Bai Changchun carried in Utopia. He was sure that the silver balls that he gave to Bai Changchun were still with him and had been brought into the boundary formation. Otherwise, he would have sensed the silver balls. If he could sense their whereabouts, he wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. After spending nearly an entire day, the three of them finally arrived in front of the cliff. On one side, the stars and moon shone brightly on the earth, while on the other side, it was completely dark. In the darkness ahead was the boundary formation that was filled with an inexplicable power. After putting away the flying shuttle, Yu Qianqiu pointed to the left and right and said, "Old Song, find a place to wait on the left. Shen Yu, find a place to wait on the right. I'll wait here. When you see him, just bring him to me." Enrich was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. He said in shock, "Are you kidding me? Who do you think he is? Do you think the two of us can bring him here just because we say so?" Yu Qianqiu slapped his forehead and smiled, "That's true. He's not as easy to talk to as I am. If you dare to make irresponsible remarks in front of him, you'll definitely suffer. Don't worry. As soon as you see him, immediately shout, 'Yu Qianqiu.' When he hears you shout my name, he'll naturally come to you to ask what's going on. There shouldn't be a problem if you bring him here. At the very least, he'll give you time to send a message to me and wait for me to find him. At the very least, if you say my name, at least he won't hurt you." Enrich and Shen Yu looked at each other. The former asked suspiciously, "What's the use of saying your name? Is this for real? Are you familiar with him? Don't ask any more. You'll know the result when the time comes." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, "Go quickly. If you miss the chance to meet him, the Immortal Emperor's wedding is not far away. We don't have time to delay anymore." After a moment of hesitation, the two of them split up and flew in different directions doubtfully. Yu Qianqiu stood alone in the same spot, rubbing his hands excitedly. He looked up at the big moon in the sky and hoped that he could pull Bai Changchun to the immortal world to support him. 3 days passed by unwittingly in the midst of waiting. In a desolate stone forest, Shen Yu carefully hid in it and silently observed his surroundings. Suddenly, he saw the air in the all-heavens boundary ripple like water in front of him. A thin old man in a green robe broke through the rippling air and slid out of the all-heavens boundary like he was standing on the bow of a ship riding the wind and waves. The thin but spirited old man in a green robe floated under the stars and moon, his eyes shining brightly as he looked around. Shen Yu immediately guessed that this was the person Yu Qianqiu wanted him to find. However, when he saw this person, his heart couldn't help but tremble. This person's eyes were filled with an indomitable sharpness. That skinny yet sonorous aura made it seem as if this person could rip him apart with just his gaze. His intuition from many years of hiding told him that this person was very dangerous. Therefore, he threw Yu Qianqiu's instructions to the back of his mind and subconsciously wanted to hide first. His head shrank slightly and his body hunched, trying to hide behind the rugged stone pillar. As for what would happen next, he would think about it later. He didn't want to take any life-threatening risks. However, before half of his head could completely hide behind the stone pillar, his clothes lightly brushed against a protruding stone. One of his eyes, which had not hidden behind the stone pillar in time, immediately saw the other party suddenly staring at him. The divine gaze was like electricity piercing one's heart, and the substantial divine sense was like the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves, cleanly and neatly sweeping through the terrain of the entire stone forest. Shen Yu was shocked. Without saying anything, he wanted to turn around and teleport away. However, just as he was about to turn around, the air around him suddenly froze and a strong pressure pressed down on him on the spot. He couldn't move at all. At this moment it was difficult to even move a single step with all his cultivation, let alone teleport away. He immediately panicked. It was only at this moment that he thought of using Yu Qianzhou's name to try and save his life. However, his lungs were already being squeezed to the point of bursting, let alone opening his mouth to speak. Even his right to explain had been taken away in an instant. The thin green-robed elder slowly descended from the sky in front of him. He looked him up and down and said indifferently, "Why are you sneaking around here and spying on me?" As soon as the elder asked this, Shen Yu immediately found that the strong pressure pressing down on his lungs had disappeared. Although he still couldn't move, at least he could breathe and speak. He didn't say anything to explain and panted as he said, "Yu Qianzhou. Yu Qianzhou. It was Yu Qianzhou who asked me to wait for you here." This thin green-robed elder was none other than Bai Changchun, who was injured by the emperor of the underworld and fled here. Hearing the other party say Yu Qianzhou's name as soon as he opened his mouth, even though he had always been calm, he couldn't help but be a little surprised. The other party had said Yu Qianzhou's name 3 times in a row, so he naturally didn't hear it wrong. But what he couldn't figure out was why Yu Qianzhou would arrange someone here to wait for him. Wasn't this disciple of his too powerful? He didn't know that Yu Qianzhou's magical power couldn't be connected to this place. After frowning and thinking for a while, he shook his hand in his sleeve and a small handful of silver balls appeared in his palm. He nodded slightly thoughtfully. He thought that Yu Qianzhou had found his whereabouts because of these silver balls, but he couldn't break into the powerful boundary formation of all heavens, so he arranged someone to wait for him here. Could it be that something had happened for him to be in such a hurry to find him? The moment Bai Changchun kept the silver balls in his hand, the strong pressure around him disappeared. Shen Yu immediately felt relaxed, and his whole body swayed as if he was drunk. Chapter 1069. It was not a good feeling to be almost crushed to the point of exploding, but to be completely relaxed in an instant. Ji Yu steadied himself and looked up at the other party. The other party asked, "Did Yu Qianzhou ask you to come?" Seeing that Yu Qianzhou's name could really save his life, Shen Yu didn't have any other thoughts. He nodded and said, "Yes, yes. He asked me to wait for you here. He said to say his name when I see you, so." Bai Changchun would not listen to him and interrupted, "He's here too? He's over there." Just as Ji Yu raised his hand and pointed, he saw a blur in front of him. His clothes tightened around his waist, and the wind whistled in his ears. He was dragged away by the other party. Yu Qianzhou, who had been staring in the direction of the all-heavens boundary for the past few days, suddenly turned his head to the right and saw a green light whistling over. When it approached, it threw out a black shadow, which immediately scared him. Bang! Shen Yu cried out in pain and struggled to get up from the ground. Then, Bai Changchun appeared in front of him and looked at him from head to toe. Yu Qianzhou looked at Shen Yu in a daze. He didn't know how he had offended Bai Changchun, causing him to make such an entrance. However, he didn't have time to think about it. He bowed to Bai Changchun and said, "Disciple greets master." "Master?" Ji Yu, who had just gotten up, was stunned. He looked at the two in surprise. So he was his master. No wonder he said his name would be useful. Bai Changchun nodded and frowned. "Why are you here?" "I heard that master was injured by Emperor of the Underworld Bai Qi and escaped here. So, I wanted to see how master's injuries were. However, this place is very strange. So, I tried my best to find master." Yu Qianzhou briefly described what happened after he arrived in the immortal world and how he found this place. He used voice transmission because Ji Yu was present and some secrets were not convenient to be revealed. Naturally, Shen Yu could tell that the two of them were avoiding him through voice transmission. He didn't dare to have any opinions, so he obediently stood by the side and didn't say a word. After listening to Yu Qianzhou's story, Bai Changchun couldn't help but look at Yu Qianzhou in amazement. He didn't expect his disciple to have such a rich and bizarre experience. Suddenly, he stared at Shen Yu with a strange gaze, sending chills down Shen Yu's spine. He wondered what bad things Yu Qianzhou had said about him. Just as Shen Yu shrunk his neck, he saw Bai Changchun's hand grabbing at the void and pulling Shen Yu into the air. Shinyu was so shocked that he screamed, "Yu Qianqiu, save me! Master! Yu Qianqiu was about to plead for Shinyu, but Bai Changchun raised his hand and lifted Shinyu in the air. He said indifferently, "The power of the all-heavens boundary is not to be underestimated. I want to see how this little demon can enter and exit freely." As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his hand and threw Jiu Yu into the all-heaven boundary formation hundreds of meters away with a whoosh. The moment Shinyu was thrown into the all-heavens boundary, his whole body was immediately shrouded in a layer of faint light, which was bright and dazzling in the dark night. Yu Qianqiu was speechless and dug his ears. It was not easy to reason with this old man. Shinyu tumbled in the all-heavens boundary for a while. After he stabilized his body, he quickly flew out. Once he came out, the faint light shrouding his body immediately disappeared. Want to escape? He admitted that he did not have that ability, but he did not dare to approach that old monster in green robe again. The other party was too strong. If he wanted to make a move, he would not be able to resist at all. He was completely like a toy in the other party's hands. Therefore, he stood weakly on the edge of the cliff. He did not dare to leave, nor did he have the guts to approach. It's really amazing. I didn't expect there to be someone here who is not restricted by the all-heavens boundary. Bai Changchun stared at Shinyu in the distance and exclaimed slightly. Then he turned around and asked, "Where is that Sung something? I want to see how his heartless palace's 3 swords in 1 sword drawing style can dominate both the immortal and netherworld realms. I will summon him back now." Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up. He took out a jade talisman and quickly crushed it to send a message. He was looking forward to the scene of Tsang Yun Xian being abused. It would take some time for Tsang Yun Xian to come back. Yu Qianqiu did not waste time and said respectfully to Bai Changchun, "Master, I heard some news about the devil god from another tomb keeper. Maybe it will be of some use to you in the future." He relayed the story that Grandma Yen told him in detail. He only hoped that his master, who was determined to fight with the devil god, would be careful. That was a real heaven's favored one. If there was a chance to meet him, he must not underestimate him. The number 1 expert of the god world. Bai Changchun muttered in a low voice. His green robe fluttered even though there was no wind, but his eyes shone brighter and brighter, revealing the uncontrollable passion in his heart. Yu Qianqiu seemed to feel a raging fire suddenly igniting in his skinny chest, burning fiercely. He massacred the divine realm by himself. Even the 6 ancient gods were not his match. Amazing. Bai Changchun let out a long sigh. The green robe on his body slowly calmed down, just like his emotions. He raised his head and looked at the big moon in the sky. His eyes were shining brightly as he said, "It seems that I still have a long way to go. I hope to see the glory of the number 1 expert in the divine realm as soon as possible. Only then will my life not be in vain." When these words fell into Yu Qianqiu's ears, he couldn't help but worry. If his master really did encounter that terrifying demon god one day, then he didn't dare to think about it any further in fear. "Master, the current emperor of the underworld should not be your match, right?" Yu Qianqiu asked in a low voice. "Him? No wonder he is the emperor who controls the underworld." Bai Changchun's eyes suddenly narrowed slightly. He shook his head lightly and said, "When I fought with his underworld generals, I used them as a reference to estimate his strength. In the end, I underestimated the emperor of the underworld's strength. Once we fought, I realized that I was ridiculously wrong. When he attacked, I did not have the strength to resist at all. In just 3 moves, he severely injured me. Especially the speed of his attack, it was simply terrifying. Just 1 move. I was hit by his 1,300 punches in an instant. I was severely injured on the spot. If I had not dispersed most of the power in time, I am afraid that I would have died without a complete corpse. You would not be able to see me standing here today. He is so powerful." Yu Qianqiu cried out involuntarily. He looked behind him and said, "Could it be that you are still not his match?" I heard from Grandma Yen that Old Man Meng's cultivation has already reached the early stage of the minor god realm. Even he could not do anything to you. Could it be that the Emperor of the Underworld is more powerful than him? Previously, I thought that the Emperor of the Underworld's cultivation was the true late stage of the Underworld Emperor. But after hearing what you said, I understand that the Emperor of the Underworld's cultivation has probably long surpassed the late stage of the Underworld Emperor. According to my judgment, he should be slightly stronger than that Old Man Meng. But you don't have to worry. As he spoke, Bai Changchun suddenly looked at the All Heavens boundary and said, "The All Heavens boundary is a good place for cultivation. I have comprehended a set of magic arts to borrow strength from it. Even if I meet the Emperor of the Underworld again, although I may not be able to defeat him, it will be impossible for him to seriously injure me like last time. What's more, I feel that my cultivation has reached the critical point of breaking through again. It should not take more than a few days. After fighting a few rounds with Old Man Meng to clear up my doubts, I think it will be about time." Hearing this, Yu Qianzhou slightly lowered his head with a somewhat gloomy expression. He had originally wanted to invite Bai Changchun to the immortal world to solve some problems. After all, who knew if the song he composed would be in line with Emperor Jin's wishes? If Emperor Jin or someone else wanted to deal with him afterwards, he could drag Bai Changchun out to suppress them. In that case, no one would dare to touch him in the future. But now it seemed that Emperor Jin's strength was not weaker than the Emperor of the Underworld, Bai Qi. He was not selfish enough to drag his master into danger. Bai Changchun glanced at him. In fact, from the moment he said that Empress Dowager Jin had issued a decree to force him to compose a song, and the date of the wedding was approaching, Bai Changchun already knew that this disciple was probably asking for his help. Now that this disciple heard that he was not a match for the Emperor of the Underworld Bai Qi, he did not mention anything about helping. It was obvious that this disciple was worried about the safety of his teacher. He could not help but nod slightly in his heart. He had not misjudged this disciple. However, how could he just stand by and watch as his disciple was in danger without doing anything? Bai Changchun clasped his hands behind his back and looked at the starry sky. There were some things that he would not tell Yu Qianzhou now. He was afraid that if he told him, this kid would become lazy and rely on him. This was the biggest taboo for a cultivator. This guy had already had enough adventures. It might not be a bad thing to train him more. A beam of light shot over from afar and suddenly stopped not far away. Tsungyin Xian appeared and looked over in shock. Yu Qianzhou and Shen Yu both turned to look. Bai Changchun was still looking at the starry sky with his hands behind his back, unmoved. Tsungyin Xian recognized the green-robed elder at first glance. It was the legendary person who challenged the Emperor of the Underworld. He looked closely and realized that the elder was only a mid-stage immortal emperor. He relaxed a little and flashed to Yu Qianzhou's side. He cupped his hands at Bai Changchun and said, "You must be the expert who broke into the Underworld Royal Palace, fought the 4 generals of the Underworld, and challenged the Emperor of the Underworld?" "I am the Great Minister of the Heartless Palace, Tsungyin Xian. Greetings." Bai Changchun tilted his head and looked at him. Then, he continued to look at the stars expressionlessly. Tsungyin Xian's expression was a little awkward. The other party did not seem to care about him at all. Although he was a little unhappy, a person's reputation was like the shadow of a tree. The other party could fight the 4 generals of the Underworld alone, escape from the hands of the Emperor of the Underworld, and play around with the little god Old Man Meng. He admitted that he did not have the ability to do so, so he had to endure it. Yu Qianzhou, who was a little dispirited, immediately became energetic when he saw this. He rubbed his hands and smiled as he introduced Tsungyin Xian. "Old Song. To tell you the truth, this is my master. This is also the reason why I insisted on coming here." Chapter 1070. He's your master? Tsungyin Xian was shocked. He looked at the two of them in disbelief and said, "If he's from the human world, then wouldn't you?" Before Yu Qianzhou could say anything, Bai Changchun had already interrupted him with a cold snort. "What's the point of someone who's about to die knowing so much?" Tsungyin Xian's pupils suddenly shrank. His right hand was already on the storage bracelet on his left wrist. He stared at Yu Qianqiu and said sternly, Yu Qianqiu. What's the meaning of this? He. That. Yu Qianqiu looked at Bai Changchun with an embarrassed smile. He did not know if Bai Changchun had the confidence to kill Sangyin Xian. After all, he had personally witnessed Sangyin Xian's 3 swords in one sword drawing style. It was simply too powerful. Bai Changchun slowly turned around and glanced at Yu Qianqiu. He said, You killed his grandson. There's already a death grudge between you and him. Leaving him alive will be a disaster. Master will help you get rid of this disaster today. How embarrassing. Yu Qianqiu rubbed his hands together in embarrassment. He did not expect the old man's temper to be so straightforward. He had not even asked for help, and the old man was already going to make a move. Sangyin Xian immediately felt a great sense of danger. In a situation where he had no confidence in defeating his opponent, he knew that he could not stay here for long. Just as he was about to quickly escape, he suddenly felt a huge pressure pressing down on him from all directions. His expression immediately changed. Hi. Sangyin Xian exhaled. His steps were as heavy as a mountain. Each step left a deep footprint on the ground. Dong, dong, dong. The ground shook as he retreated with great difficulty. The closer he got to the other party, the more dangerous it felt. He had thought that it would not be easy for the other party to suppress him. However, when he saw the other party standing with his hands behind his back, he immediately panicked. The other party really did have the strength to kill him easily. He immediately spat angrily, Bai Changchun. I have no grievances with you. Don't go too far. Let me see your 3 swords in one sword drawing style. Bai Changchun's gaze fell on his hands that were about to pull out the sword, and he gave an irrelevant answer. Don't think about luck. If you don't pull out your sword now, you won't have another chance. Pull out your sword. At this point, Yu Qianqiu, who was behind Bai Changchun, dodged to the side of the cliff with Xinyu. He was prepared to leave if anything went wrong. Sangyin Xian knew that there was no turning back now, so he shouted in shock and anger, sword drawing style. With a wave of his hand, a dazzling bright light instantly shot out from his sleeve. The light instantly illuminated the world, and the startling light effortlessly broke through the huge pressure around him. Like a delicate heavenly dragon, the incomparably domineering light swept out with a whistling sound, as if it wanted to break the world apart. Almost at the same time, the green robe that was about to be engulfed by the shocking light seemed to be blown by a breeze. As it swayed, the brilliance of the stars and the moon in the night sky seemed to freeze, like a huge disk blocking in front of the skinny body. Xinyu, who was about to flash into the boundary barrier, and Yu Qianqiu, who was about to flash into utopia, were stunned at the same time. This was because they had both seen the domineering power of Sangyin Xian's 3 swords in one sword drawing style. It was a powerful force that felt unstoppable. However, at this moment, the dazzling light was blocked by the huge void disk that was like a tall mountain. The surrounding air seemed to have been sucked out by the huge disk in an instant. The two of them even felt that the breath in their lungs was forcefully sucked out by the disk, making them almost suffocate. The void disk stood between heaven and earth. It was abnormally grand and huge, and it rippled with a mysterious luster. It blocked the shocking light that seemed to be able to split the world apart. The two of them originally thought that there would be an earth-shattering sound when they collided, but the combination of hardness and softness resulted in silence. Bai Changchun, who was standing with his hands behind his back, raised one hand and stroked his beard. Suddenly, his eyes lit up, and his hands slid out from under his beard. He stretched out his hand toward the huge disk in front of him. The indomitable disk was immediately pushed forward by 3 feet and began to rotate slowly. It seemed to be rotating with great difficulty under the immense pressure. Humph. Bai Changchun suddenly let out a cold snort that sounded like a vajra subduing a demon. He raised his hand in a very natural manner and drew 2 fingers towards the sky towards the huge disk that was rotating with difficulty. A ray of light zigzagged across the huge disk, as if it was going to split the huge disk into 2 from the center. Immediately, light and shadow intertwined on the huge disk. In the blink of an eye, half of it turned white and the other half black, turning into two yin and yang fish chasing each other head to tail. The entire disc immediately rotated faster, stirring up the shocking light that was pressing against the huge disc. Although this exchange of blows seemed slow, it was actually completed in the time of a single breath. Tai Chi. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He stared at the yin and yang fish that were chasing each other. The huge disc was exactly the same as the Tai Chi diagram he saw in his previous life, and it was displaying the mysterious power of the Tai Chi diagram. Shen Yu's mouth formed a circle, and his eyes widened. He never dreamed that Grey Cloud Xian's 3-in-1 sword drawing style would be blocked so silently. That was the 3-in-1 sword drawing style of the Heartless Palace that instantly destroyed half of Twilight City. However, what surprised him even more was yet to come: return. Bai Changchun let out a sonorous chant. As his green robe fluttered, he pressed one of his palms towards the huge disc. The indomitable Tai Chi disc shrank rapidly, and the fierce light that followed it seemed to become a part of the Tai Chi disc, shrinking rapidly as well. In the blink of an eye, the shrunken Tai Chi disc merged with the shocking light and became the size of a wash basin. It absorbed and rotated in Bai Changchun's outstretched palm. Although the originally dazzling light had shrunk, it had become gentle. It was like a lantern covered with gauze, illuminating Bai Changchun's green robe particularly clearly. However, everyone could sense that the condensed ball of light in his palm was filled with a terrifying power that made one's heart palpitate. Is this the famous 3-in-1 sword drawing style of the Heartless Palace? As his green robe fluttered slightly, Bai Changchun clenched one hand behind his back and used the other to absorb the light ball. He said coldly, "That's all there is to it." How? How is this possible? Grey Cloud Xian's expression changed drastically in shock. He thought that the other party would use his powerful cultivation or treasures to forcefully break his sword drawing style, but he never expected that someone would be able to silently and gently absorb the power of his sword drawing style with just a wave of his hand. How could the great power that had already been released be absorbed by someone else again? It was so easily caught in his hand. He could actually catch the energy released by someone else with his bare hands. This was a great amount of released energy. It wasn't a physical object, so how was this possible? Grey Cloud Xian's face instantly turned pale. Only then did he know that the other party's strength far surpassed his, and he was no match for him at all. Fortunately, the great pressure that restricted his movements had already been broken by his sword drawing style. Any thoughts of resistance that Grey Cloud Xian had instantly vanished. Go! The faster the better, the further the better. Grey Cloud Xian fled in a flash. However, before he could move, Bai Changchun seemed to have already predicted what he would do. He said calmly, "I said that you're someone who's about to die. Do you still want to run?" The ball of light in his palm suddenly stopped spinning. With this stop, the ball of light immediately showed signs of expanding and exploding. Bai Changchun's palm pierced through the expanding ball of light at an extremely fast speed. As it moved in and out, his 5 fingers drew dreamy trajectories. Almost instantly, countless dazzling light beams shot out from the ball of light like a violent storm. They shot out densely like a net, and the sharp sound of them tearing through the air rang out incessantly. Lost immortal finger. Yu Qianqiu mumbled with his mouth agape. This was the 3rd time he had seen his master use the lost immortal finger. He had never seen anyone survive this move. In reality, Grey Cloud Xian had already teleported and disappeared from where he was. However, his miserable cries could be heard from the void where the countless dazzling light beams shot out. The moment he appeared in the air, he was already riddled with holes by the countless dazzling light beams, and he was devoured in the blink of an eye. Following his miserable cries, his figure could no longer be seen. All that could be seen was a dense meteor shower shooting into the starry night sky. After the energy of the expanding ball of light was vented, Bai Changchun pulled out his palm and pressed down on it. The ball of light was sucked back into his palm and started spinning again. However, its size had shrunk by half. Shen Yu and Yu Qianqiu, who were still standing dumbfounded at the edge of the cliff, suddenly saw Bai Changchun flick his sleeve. The ball of light flew over their heads with a whoosh and entered the barrier of heavens behind them. The two silly birds turned around dumbfoundedly with their mouths wide open. They saw the ball of light distort the moment it entered the barrier of heavens. It was quickly torn apart by an invisible energy and silently disappeared without a trace. Such a powerful energy disappeared just like that. The two of them slowly turned around at the same time and looked at each other. They felt their throats go dry and they didn't know what to say. Finally, they looked in the direction that Greycloud Enchanting had escaped in. The scene of him being riddled with holes still appeared in their minds. Greycloud Enchanting's miserable cries seemed to still echo in their ears. Greycloud Enchanting, who was a middle-stage immortal emperor, was killed just like that? The two of them stole another glance at each other, as if they couldn't accept this reality. Shen Yu's expression was a little ugly. He didn't dare to look straight at Bai Changchun. Worry and hesitation appeared in his eyes. He didn't know if it would be his turn next. Even Greycloud Enchanting was killed so easily. He didn't think he had any chance of escaping. Old song. I'm sorry, I didn't expect him to make a move so quickly. I didn't even have the chance to say goodbye to you. Yu Qianqiu withdrew his gaze from the sky and thought of the huge Tai Chi diagram from before. He flashed to Bai Changchun's side and asked with an embarrassed smile, "You really broadened my horizons just now. May I know the name of Master's move?" "I don't know. It doesn't have a name yet." The skinny figure shrouded in the green robe turned around. Bai Changchun put his hands behind his back again as if nothing had happened. He looked up at the darkness on the other side of the cliff and said, "This is a new power manipulation method that I comprehended in the barrier of heavens. One movement is divided into yin and yang. It's mysterious and profound. I still need to continue to comprehend and perfect it." Chapter 1071. Hearing this, Yu Qianqiu was speechless for a while. He felt that this old man was indeed too abnormal. He could easily comprehend some kind of cultivation method. How could others who cultivated the same way as him endure it, especially him, his disciple? The theory of Tai Chi Yin and Yang seemed to have a complete system to follow in his previous life. Unfortunately, he was not an all-rounder who knew everything about astronomy and geography. He did not know much about this mysterious thing. Otherwise, he could really make up a few things to make the old man look at him differently. "Is there anything else?" Bai Changchun suddenly looked at him and asked lightly. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He heard a hint of, "Don't disturb me if there's nothing else," from his master's words. His lips moved as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he still bowed and said, "Seeing that master is fine, disciple is relieved. Disciple still has some things to deal with, so I won't disturb master." Bai Changchun nodded expressionlessly. Yu Qianqiu bowed again and left. Then, he slowly took a few steps back and flashed to Shen Yu's side. He tilted his head and stole a glance at his master. He saw that Bai Changchun was still standing with his hands behind his back, looking up at the starry sky. His green robe fluttered in the night wind. Shen Yu looked at Yu Qianqiu with a panicked expression. He did not know what he wanted to do. Yu Qianqiu looked at him with a smile and said, "Don't be nervous. I always keep my word. I promise to help you remove the restriction in your body, so naturally, I will do it. Relax your body." Shen Yu was surprised and happy when he heard this. He looked at him in disbelief. He did not know if what he said was true or not. After all, he had not sent him out as promised. However, it was not up to him whether he believed it or not. He could only do as he was told and relax his body nervously. "Open your mouth." Yu Qianqiu let out a low growl, his 5 fingers grabbing towards Shen Yu's mouth. Shen Yu immediately felt the bead in his body rushing towards his throat. He quickly opened his mouth, and a green light shot out. Yu Qianqiu's hand grabbed, and his fist was hidden in his sleeve. Shen Yu was overjoyed. He touched his chest and confirmed that the thing in his body had been removed. The stone in his heart immediately fell to the ground. He looked at Yu Qianqiu and didn't know what to say. After a while, he said incoherently, "I will definitely keep my promise and send you out." "No need. I have my own way to leave, but I want you to promise me something else. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and pointed at the all-heavens boundary outside the cliff. Every year on this day, you have to wait for me at the river Styx at the border between the endless horizon and here for a day. If I still don't come after a day, you have to come back. How about that? Then, he looked at Bai Changchun. Shen Yu also peeked at Bai Changchun. Although the restriction in his body had been removed, he had no choice but to agree. His master could enter and exit the all-heavens boundary at will. He had completely lost his defensive advantage. The consequences of not agreeing could be imagined. He nodded awkwardly. I understand. Every year on this day, I will wait for you at the river Styx at the border between the endless horizon and here for a day. A smile bloomed on Yu Qianqiu's face. Shen Yu. Don't blame me for using you. You have to know that you provoked me first. Furthermore, if it wasn't for my help, who knows when you would be able to return here. So, we are even now. You can go. Go back to the home you have been away from for 150,000 years. I'm glad to have met you in the netherworld this time. We will meet again if fate allows. I should go back now. Goodbye. Then, he smiled and cupped his fists at Shen Yu. Then, he turned around and bowed to Bai Changchun, who was standing under the moonlight with his hands behind his back. Just as Shen Yu cupped his fists to return the greeting, he realized that Yu Qianqiu had disappeared without a trace. There was no fluctuation in the air around him. He had no idea where Yu Qianqiu had gone. Did he really leave? Shen Yu was stunned. Then, he became a little excited. With Yu Qianqiu's departure and the words he said before he left, the resentment that had accumulated in his heart disappeared instantly. Thinking about it carefully, Yu Qianqiu did not owe him anything. He even brought him back to the home that he had been away from for 150,000 years. Seriously speaking, he should be thanking him. Shen Yu took a deep breath. The shackles that had been on him all these years had finally been removed. He could be free again. His gaze fell on the skinny old man in a green robe. He bowed respectfully to Yao Yao in silence. Then, he turned into a stream of light and flew away without any worries or fear. After he disappeared into the distance, Bai Changchun, who was standing with his hands behind his back and looking at the stars, suddenly looked outside the celestial boundary. His eyes flickered and he snorted coldly. How dare you treat my disciple as a performer and sing for you? How majestic of an emperor. Just change the wedding ceremony to a funeral ceremony. As soon as he finished speaking, he flicked his sleeve and turned into a stream of light that flew away quickly. He was heading in the direction of Old Meng. The sun was shining brightly in Utopia. Weeds and wildflowers clustered beside the gurgling stream. On a small mountain surrounded by the stream, Yu Qianqiu stretched out his hand to block the glaring sunlight. After staying in the dark netherworld for a long time, he really could not adapt to the sunlight. After a while, he put down his hand and looked around at the lush greenery at the foot of the mountain. It was so good to take a breath of fresh air. He could not help but sigh. Humans and ghosts are indeed different. People should stay where they are. After saying that, he closed his eyes again. After a moment of silence, he slowly shook his head and opened his eyes. He found that he had indeed completely lost contact with the tomb of the god of sin. Not only could he not find Bai Changchun, but the silver ball that he had thrown inside did not respond at all. He did not know what trick there was in the tomb of the god of sin to be able to isolate the outside world. It was impossible to enter and exit the tomb of the god of sin at any time. Fortunately, he had made preparations in advance. He made an agreement with Shen Yu once a year, so he had the opportunity to enter and exit the tomb of the god of sin. It was unknown what he thought of, but after shaking his head, he disappeared again. The sky was high and the sky was wide. At the peak of the love mound that suddenly emerged from the sea of clouds, Mei He, whose clothes were fluttering in the wind, held both of his hands with a gloomy expression. There was a broken nameplate in his hands. The owner of this nameplate was Grey Cloud Xian. The breaking of the nameplate meant that the owner had died. Opposite him was the tall and thin Wang Qing. His wide blue robe was fluttering in the wind, and his long hair, which was not tied up, fluttered behind him. The eyes in the 2 holes of the silver mask were cold. He stared motionlessly at the nameplate in Meihi's hands. No one could see what expression he had on his face. Suddenly, there was a rustling sound not far away. Meihi felt that the wind that swept back and forth on the mountain peak had solidified. He turned his head and saw that the 6-dragon snow blue, which was originally restrained, was now overflowing with light. The huge sword that was half inserted into the mountain peak was slowly being pulled out by itself. Meihi could feel the anger of his honored master. Thinking about it, the only one in the Heartless Palace who could use the 3-in-1 sword drawing style was the High Priest. The death of the High Priest was indeed a huge loss to the Heartless Palace. With a clang sound, the 6-dragon snow blue returned to its original position. The flowing light was restrained again, and the wind swept back and forth on the mountain peak again. Meihi raised his head slightly to look at his honored master, but he saw that his honored master had already turned around. He could only see his honored master's back. He said in an indifferent voice, "I will go down the mountain to attend Jintai's wedding ceremony in a few days. Before that, I don't want to be distracted. Release the news that your eldest senior brother has died. Take the opportunity to find out the cause of his death to deceive others. You will personally lead people to the Netherworld and take the core forces of the Heartless Palace away in batches. When you reach the Netherworld, there will naturally be people who will receive you." Ah. Meihi's waist straightened. He immediately felt that something was wrong. How was this investigating the cause of eldest senior brother's death? It was obviously secretly transferring the forces of the Heartless Palace to the Netherworld. Could it be, just as he was about to ask the reason, he saw Wang Qing raise his right hand slightly and stop him from asking any more questions. His indifferent voice continued to be ethereal. "If I am defeated by Jintai and can still survive, I will immediately go to the Netherworld to meet you. If I am lucky enough to win against Jintai, I will naturally call you back to regroup. If I die, the disciples of the Heartless Palace will be under your command. If you have the chance to take revenge for me in the future, then do it. If not, then forget it. Don't ask any more questions. There are some things that you will naturally know when the time comes. Go do what you have to do." Meihi's expression changed unpredictably. He paused for a moment before bowing and accepting the order, "Yes." Then, he turned into a stream of light and entered the undulating sea of clouds on the mountainside. In a hidden valley outside the hallucinatory Immortal city, Yu Qianshou's head suddenly popped out from a corner of the mountain wall. He looked left and right to make sure there was no one around before popping out. He originally wanted to teleport back to the World Chamber of Commerce, but he thought that he had stayed in the Netherworld for such a long time. If no one saw him return, it would raise suspicions. Some things had to be explained, such as Zhang Yinxin's death. Unexpectedly, just as he popped out of the mountain wall and tidied up his clothes, he suddenly smelled a special fragrance. It was a familiar feeling. He then wrinkled his nose and fanned his nostrils, sniffing around with a puzzled expression. Just as he walked out of the crevice in the mountain, he suddenly heard someone shouting in the air, "Over there." Yu Qianshou looked up and saw 3 streams of light had already landed on the other side of the mountain slope. Although he couldn't see clearly what was happening over there, he heard a clear and melodious voice of a woman saying in a panic, "What are you trying to do?" Then, he heard a lewd laughter and an unusually familiar dialogue, "Little girl. I don't think you're a disciple of any famous sect based on your clothes. You're sneakily hiding here and there by yourself. Did you do something shameful?" Someone immediately answered with a lewd laugh, "That's right. Stop obediently and let us examine you properly." "I didn't. It was you who chased me, that's why I was hiding." The woman who spoke suddenly screamed, "Don't come over. Otherwise, my grandfather won't let you off." Chapter 1072. Damn it. Why are the ruffians in the immortal world so lousy, still stuck in the ancient times? Yu Qianshou looked back in the direction of the hallucinatory Immortal city, then looked in the direction of the lewd laughter. He couldn't help but pick his nose. Should he go back to do his own things, or fight for justice and eradicate evil? What if he encountered a tough guy and was beaten up by the ruffians? His nose flapped again as he sniffed the fragrance, faintly evoking memories. He remembered the origin of this fragrance. He clenched his teeth and sighed, but he still dodged. Once he landed on the hill, he immediately saw 3 men surrounding a green-clothed little girl. He didn't guess wrong, it was the little girl called Lu Qing, who followed an old man to sell things in the hallucinatory Immortal city. Yu Qianqiu sized up the 3 men and found that he couldn't see through their cultivation. Their cultivation was clearly higher than his, and their clothes were also somewhat familiar. They seemed to be disciples of some large sect. He couldn't help but frown. As expected, those who dared to do this kind of thing in the open had a background. The moment he landed, the 3 men below also noticed the movement and looked up. When they saw that it was Yu Qianqiu, their expressions changed slightly. How could it be him? A person's reputation was like a tree's shadow. Who didn't know the world commerce's sect master, Yu Qianqiu? Moreover, these 3 people had seen Yu Qianqiu with their own eyes. Although Yu Qianqiu didn't know them, they knew that no matter how strong their background was, this person couldn't be provoked. At least for now, this person was carrying the Immortal Emperor's decree and could do whatever he wanted. The green-clothed little girl looked up, and her eyes immediately lit up as if she had met her savior. She shouted, "Yu Qianqiu, save me!" This girl's memory was really good. I forgot what your name was, but you still remembered my name. Yu Qianqiu's mouth twitched. He was too embarrassed to ignore it now. He raised his brows and stared at the 3 people below with a sneer. The 3 of you are really in a good mood. This Yu is interested to see what the 3 of you want to do. Continue, this Yu probably won't disturb you. What do you mean I probably won't disturb you? The trio's expressions changed again. One of them politely cupped his hands and said, "So it's sect leader Yu. We greet you." The other 2 hurriedly followed suit and bowed. The man then pointed to the green-clothed girl and said, "We saw her acting suspiciously and were just about to question her. Since Sect Master Yu is here, I believe she won't be able to cause any trouble. Let's hand her over to Sect Master Yu to handle." The other 2 nodded in agreement. They knew how to conduct themselves. They had the taste of letting you taste the soup of this little beauty first. Did he really think that all the men in the world were black? Don't you know what it means to be lecherous? Yu Qianqiu's face darkened immediately. He said in a low voice, "Bullsh *T. If you don't scram, I'll chop off your dog heads." The trio smiled flatteringly and immediately ran away with their tails between their legs. Yu Qianqiu looked at the 3 of them running away. He didn't fly into a rage and chase after them. Let's not talk about whether he could catch up to them or not. The key was that he didn't have the mood to fly into a rage. He reckoned that once he returned, the people from Heartless Palace would ask him why Greycloud Xian died. There was also the matter of the Immortal Palace that he had to deal with. How could he be in the mood to cause more trouble? Hearing movement, he turned around cautiously. The green-clothed girl had already flashed to the hillside. Her 10 fingers were rubbing the edge of her skirt as she looked at him from a distance. Her pure eyes were flickering, and it was as if they could speak. There seemed to be anticipation and fear in her eyes. The fragrance became more and more alluring. Yu Qianqiu took a deep breath and shook his head with a smile. "Little girl. Go home quickly. Don't run out alone in the future." After saying that, he turned around and was about to leave. He didn't have the good moral character to send the little girl home. He had already tried his best to help her. After all, the world had become so chaotic. There were too many people who needed help. The weak were prey to the strong. He was in a precarious situation, so he had to deal with it carefully. How could he care too much? However, the little girl's crisp voice came from behind him. She said weakly, "My name is Lu. Yu Qianqiu stopped in his tracks and scratched his forehead speechlessly. He turned around and looked at her in confusion, as if asking what she meant. The green-clothed girl immediately said with anticipation, "Yu Qianqiu. We met in the hallucinatory Immortal City. My grandfather was there too. You even gave me spirit stones." "So what?" Yu Qianqiu scratched his head again. He still didn't understand what the little girl was trying to say. Then, realization dawned on his face. He took out a big handful of divine-grade spirit stones from his storage pouch and walked in front of her. He pulled out her hands that were rubbing the hem of her skirt, then pried open her slender fingers and placed the big handful of divine-grade spirit stones in her fair palms. The little girl's pretty and slightly immature face revealed a blank expression as she looked at him, then at the spirit stones in her hands. She also didn't understand what he was trying to say. After doing all this, Yu Qianqiu turned into a streak of light and shot into the sky, flying in the direction of the hallucinatory Immortal City. However, he immediately felt someone following him. When he turned around, he saw the little girl flying behind him. Why did it feel like she was following him? Could it be that they were going the same way? Yu Qianqiu's brows creased into a frown. His figure flashed and deviated from the direction he was flying in. In the end, the little girl also made a turn in the air and followed him. This time, Yu Qianqiu couldn't take it anymore. His figure stopped, turning around and floating in the air. The little girl blinked her eyes as she stopped in front of him, her hands still holding the pile of spirit stones. "Miss Lu, why are you following me?" Yu Qianqiu asked in a low voice. Lu had a blank expression on her face as if she didn't know anything. She raised the spirit stones in her hands and said, "Your things are with me." Yu Qianqiu immediately heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed like this little girl was following him because she wanted to return the spirit stones to him. As expected, she was a naive person who didn't understand the ways of the world. It was all his fault for not making things clear. He smiled bitterly and said, "Miss Lu, these spirit stones are for you. There's no need to return them to me." Who knew that Lu's head would shake like a rattle drum, and she said, "My grandfather said that people's hearts are sinister. I can't simply take other people's things." Yu Qianqiu was choked by her words. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he said, "Since you know that people's hearts are sinister, you still dare to run around with me? I'll give you the spirit stones. Quickly go home and don't follow me anymore. But you're a good person," Lu said very seriously. However, when she heard that the spirit stones were for her, she kept the things in her hands impolitely. These words were really ironic. Why don't I feel like I'm a good person? Yu Qianqiu scratched his nose in embarrassment and sized up the little girl again. He realized that her cultivation was similar to his and couldn't help but grit his teeth. Such a naive little girl with a low cultivation was like a piece of fatty meat wherever she went. He really didn't feel at ease letting her run around alone. He then asked somewhat gloomily, "I say, Lu, where's your house? How can your grandfather feel at ease letting you run around alone?" Lu lowered her head slightly and said, "I also don't know where my house is. I snuck out alone. My grandfather still doesn't know that I ran out. I can't find my way back." After saying that, she looked at Yu Qianqiu with eyes filled with anticipation, as if she was saying, "Take me in." Yu Qianqiu's expression collapsed. How could the World Commerce Association casually take in outsiders? He wanted to immediately harden his heart and leave, but he couldn't win against the other party's clean and clear eyes. After hesitating for a while, he still gave in and asked, "Then what if your grandfather wants to find you but can't find you?" "He won't." Lu shook her head repeatedly and said, "If grandfather discovers that I'm not here, as long as I'm still in the immortal realm, he can find me anytime he wants. He can sense where I am." There was such an ability? Wouldn't it have the same effect as his own golden beads? Yu Qianqiu's face was filled with suspicion as he said, "Since it's like this, then follow me first. When your grandfather finds you, then you can go home with your grandfather." After saying that, he suddenly had a feeling of abducting a good person. Lu nodded her head repeatedly in response, as if wishing for it to be so. This unlucky girl who cheats people. Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes at her and shouted, "Follow me." His figure flashed and flew towards the direction of the illusory immortal city. Lu followed with an excited expression. The sea of clouds in front of them was filled with flowing lights of all colors. The two of them also entered the sea of clouds one after the other. Here, Yu Qianqiu deliberately slowed down his flying speed to let others have a chance to see that he had returned. As expected, his return was like a stone that caused 1,000 ripples, immediately causing a commotion in the illusory immortal city. On the rooftop of the World Commerce Association, Deming Luan and Wei Chuanxiu were excitedly surrounding Yun Peng and talking about something. When they saw Yu Qianqiu land with a young lady, their expressions froze and they looked at Lu with astonishment. Lu moved behind Yu Qianqiu in fear. Yu Qianqiu looked at the three of them in confusion. Before he landed, he clearly saw that the three of them were filled with excitement and didn't know what good thing had happened. The three of them didn't ask about his return. Instead, it was Wei Chuanxiu who lifted her chin towards Lu and said with a frown, "Yu Qianqiu. Who is this young lady?" Deming Luan's eyes flickered. He faintly felt that he had seen this young lady somewhere before. "She's called Lu I picked her up on the road. Let me make arrangements for her first before coming back to talk." Yu Qianqiu turned around and waved at Lu leading her down quickly. Walking in the corridor, he could faintly hear the sound of mahjong tiles being shuffled. Following the source of the sound to a door, Yu Qianqiu pushed open the door and couldn't help but reveal a bitter smile. The women were all here. 4 fighting bitterly and 1 watching. He really didn't know where they got their patience from to never get tired of playing. Actually, he had wronged them. They didn't know that no matter how fun it was, it couldn't withstand playing it day after day. This mahjong tile that didn't have any stakes had long lost its initial passion. The women usually cultivated in their own rooms. Coincidentally, Ze pulled them over to play today on a whim and coincidentally bumped into them when he came back. Hearing the sound of the door opening, the women turned around and were instantly pleasantly surprised. Those who were sitting all stood up. Ze even pushed the mahjong tiles away with a crash and exclaimed excitedly, "Big liar. You're back." Chapter 1073. Hearing this, Yu Qianqiu's smiling face immediately sunk. He came back happily, but he couldn't seem to be happy when he met this woman. She made a fuss in front of everyone and didn't know what it meant to give others face. Yu Qianqiu gave her a dark look and moved to the side, making way for Lu behind him. The little girl looked curiously and timidly at the beautiful sisters in the room. The women looked at each other with complicated expressions. "Wah. I didn't say anything wrong, right?" Ze jumped out and turned to face her sisters. She pointed at Yu Qianqiu at the door and shouted, "I said he was going to bring another one back for you." Turning around, she faced Yu Qianqiu with a face full of anger and said, "I didn't think you wouldn't even let off such a young girl. Are you done?" Yu Qianqiu looked at her coldly and snorted, "None of your business. You're shameless." Ze scolded with a flushed face. Yu Qianqiu couldn't be bothered with her and nodded at Yanyu. Yanyu walked over and squeezed out a smile, saying, "You're back." Yu Qianqiu pointed at Lu and said, "She's called Lu. On the way back, I happened to see her being bullied by a few men, so I saved her. I saw that she didn't know the ways of the world and was afraid that she would encounter some danger, so I brought her back first. When the time comes, her grandfather will come to find her. You look after her first. Don't let her run around the World Commerce Association." Once these words were said, the women immediately understood. So it was like this. It wasn't what everyone thought at all. The furious Ze immediately became incomparably embarrassed. Her mouth pouted a few times and she lost her temper. Yu Qianqiu's gaze swept across the few women and coincidentally met with the 100 Charms Beauty's gaze. The 100 Charms Beauty calmly nodded and smiled, while Yu Qianqiu's gaze was somewhat flustered as he avoided it. He waved his hand at the few people and said, "I still have some things to do. You guys help look after her." He pointed at Lure and left like he was escaping. Looking at the silhouette disappearing outside the door, the Allure Beauty's expression became slightly desolate. A trace of desolation flashed in her eyes, but she was immediately awakened by Ziyi's cheers. Ziyi was holding the little girl's hand as she clicked her tongue and asked in surprise, "Are you called Lu, er? Liar, did Yu Qianshou help you deal with those men who bullied you?" The few women didn't know whether to laugh or cry as they looked at Ziyi. It wouldn't be wrong to say that they were envious of her. They envied her for being heartless. No matter how big the matter was, it was in the past. Next time, she might still go against Yu Qianshou. Yan Yu had been secretly paying attention to the changes in the Allure Beauty's expression. In order to divert her thoughts, she secretly transmitted a message to her, "Zi, this girl." The reason why she went against Yu Qianshou at every turn was to use this method to attract Yu Qianshou and make Yu Qianshou pay more attention to her. However, she didn't know that Yu Qianshou had always been amenable to coaxing but not coercion. If this continued, it would only make Yu Qianshou hate her more and more. AI. You must know that although Yu Qianshou doesn't look like a good person and doesn't do anything good, he has a chivalrous and tender side in his bones. He doesn't like unruly and willful women. Ziyi's actions have produced the opposite effect. It looks like we have to find a chance to give her some advice. The Allure Beauty nodded slightly in agreement. She couldn't help but smile bitterly at Ziyi. Just when Yu Qianshou returned to the rooftop, he suddenly noticed a stranger on the rooftop. It was an old man with a rigid face. From his blue robe, he could tell that he was from the Heartless Palace. Yu Qianshou sneered in his heart. What should come has come. Seeing Yu Qianshou walking over, Wei Chuanxiu and the other two revealed a strange expression. The blue-robed man cupped his hands at him expressionlessly and said, "I am Fang Yi, a consecrator of the Heartless Palace. You must be the World Chamber of Commerce's sect master, Yu Qianshou? So it's consecrator Fang. I've heard a lot about you." Yu Qianshou hurriedly returned the greeting with a smile. "May I know why consecrator Fang has come?" "Sect Master Yu is in charge of a sect and has many busy matters to deal with. I won't beat around the bush and get straight to the point." Fang Yi stared at Yu Qianshou with a sharp gaze and asked, "Sect Master Yu, our sect's great consecrator, Zhangyun Xian, was ordered to protect you. He has always been by your side. Now that you've returned safely, may I know where consecrator Zhang is?" Yu Qianshou was stunned and asked with a face full of doubt, "Didn't consecrator Zhang return first? We separated a month ago. Didn't he return to the Heartless Palace?" Wei Chuanxiu and the other two exchanged glances. Fang Yi raised his eyebrows and snorted coldly, "Sect Master Yu, did you remember wrongly? Consecrator Zhang was ordered to protect your safety. Before receiving the decree of our sect master, he would never separate from you. Sect Master Yu, why don't you think about it carefully? Maybe you can remember where consecrator Zhang is? It would have been fine if you didn't mention it. I'm angry now that you mention it." Yu Qianshou glared at him and said, "We originally wanted to go to the underworld's boundless horizon to have a look. Who knew that we would find a place called Underworld Spirit Manor, in the Underworld River? Consecrator Zhang said that he would go in and explore it and would be back soon. He asked me to hide in a safe place outside and wait for him. In the end, I waited for a few days and didn't see him coming back to find me. I didn't know how long I had to wait for him. Remembering that the wedding of the Celestial Emperor was approaching, I took the Underworld Emperor's token and asked someone to send me back first. From what you said, could it be that he hasn't returned yet? Underworld Spirit Manor." The few of them frowned and muttered. From the looks of confusion on their faces, it seemed that they had never heard of such a place. Yu Qianshou sneered in his heart, "If the Heartless Palace has the guts, go to the Underworld Spirit Manor to investigate. I will wait for the good news." Fang Yi opened his eyes and looked at Yu Qianshou and said slowly, "Not long before Sect Master Yu returned, I received a message from the sect saying that the nameplate belonging to Consecrator Zhang had shattered. In other words, Consecrator Zhang is dead." The other three were not surprised at all. Obviously, they had already heard about this from him. They all stared at Yu Qianqiu without blinking, as if they wanted to see something from his face. In the end, Yu Qianqiu said with a face full of shock, "Consecrator Tsang is dead? How is this possible? How many people in the world can block his 3 swords as one sword drawing style? When did this happen? It's easy to dodge a spear in the open but hard to guard against a stab in the dark. I received news that Consecrator Tsang met with an accident early this morning." Fang Ye's indifferent expression suddenly paused. As he said this, he recalled that the location of Consecrator Tsang's accident was in the underworld. Moreover, Yu Qianqiu had returned on the same day. How many people in the world could rush to the illusionary immortal city from the exit of the underworld in less than a day? After pondering for a while, Fang Yi cupped his fists and said, "Since Sect Master Yu doesn't know, I won't disturb you anymore." As he said this, he specially cupped his fists towards Yun Peng. "Congratulations Mountain Lord Bai Yun for breaking through to the intermediate stage of Immortal Emperor. Everyone, farewell." Then he turned into a flowing light and left. After everyone saw him off, Yu Qianqiu looked at Yun Peng and said in shock, "Senior Yun's cultivation has broken through to the intermediate stage of Immortal Emperor?" Yun Peng revealed a rare smile. "This is all thanks to the Phoenix true blood you gave me. There's no need to be courteous with him, this is what he should do. You helped him guard his home, so it's natural for you to give him something." Wei Chunxiu waved his hand and looked at Yu Qianqiu with a face full of annoyance. "Back then, I felt that it wasn't right for you to get Consecrator Tsang Yun to protect you. Tell me the truth, is Consecrator Tsang Yun's death really not related to you? You can't wash yourself clean even if you jump into the river Styx, believe it or not." Yu Qianqiu said perfunctorily. "All right. Now is not the time to argue about this." De Mingluan raised his hand to stop the two from bickering. He stared at Yu Qianqiu and frowned. "It's good that you're back safely. Do you know that with the Immortal Emperor's wedding approaching, Immortal Empress Ji Wu has asked you about your composing progress multiple times? Everyone in the Immortal Palace is very concerned and has sent me multiple messages. As the leader of the Merchant Association, I have personally gone to the World Merchant Association many times for this matter. Since you're back, quickly prepare to go to the Immortal Palace with me." Damn it. What is this woman Ji Wu trying to do? Is she trying to trick me? Yu Qianqiu cursed in his heart. He was still a little worried that Ji Wu would reveal his background. Although he knew that if she wanted to reveal it, she would have done so long ago. Wei Chunxiu glanced at him and asked De Mingluan worriedly, "Will something happen to him if we really let him go to the Immortal Palace?" Yu Qianqiu nodded in agreement. "Isn't there still a few days? Isn't it too early to go now?" De Mingluan sneered. "What kind of occasion do you think the Immortal Emperor's wedding is? All the sect masters in the immortal world will be there to congratulate him. If you come up with something that can't be shown in public, will they let you perform in public? There's naturally a reason for you to go earlier." As he spoke, he looked at Yun Peng and Wei Chunxiu's faces and finally at Yu Qianqiu's face. He said slowly, "So you better think carefully. If you really don't have the confidence, you might as well say it now." Wei Chunxiu's eyebrows twitched as she vaguely sensed something. She asked suspiciously, "What do you mean?" De Mingluan stared at Yu Qianqiu and said in a deep voice, "You said you have the token of the Emperor of the Underworld. Is this true?" Yu Qianqiu looked at the three and thought that there was no need to hide it. He nodded. "It is true. What does this have to do with the token of the Emperor of the Underworld?" De Mingluan's eyes lit up. "Of course it has something to do with it. As far as I know, the token of the Emperor of the Underworld will not easily appear in the hands of unrelated people. It must be given to someone who is deeply trusted by the Emperor of the Underworld. If you really don't have the confidence for this wedding, we still have a chance to save our lives. That is, we will all hide in the underworld while we still have some time. With the protection of the Emperor of the Underworld, Jin Tai will not be able to do anything to us in the underworld. The Emperor of the Underworld will not let Jin Tai do anything to us even if it is for his own sake." "Us?" Yu Qianqiu was surprised. "You also want to escape with us?" "Of course." De Mingluan was angry, pointing and scolding. "What does your song have to do with me?" You just have to make one request after another to the Celestial Palace. Do you think the Celestial Palace is a place where you can bargain? Isn't it because of the two of them that I fought for you? If you run away, Kintai's face will be lost. How can I have a good ending as a guarantor? What else can I do but run away with you? It is my bad luck to know you. I have to live in fear every day. Chapter 1074. Wei Chuanxiu and Yun Peng looked at each other. They had known the big bright wheel for so many years, and it was rare to see him lose his composure like this. It was obvious that he was really unhappy, or that he had no confidence in Yu Qianqiu's trip to the Immortal Palace. The two looked at the culprit at the same time. Yu Qianqiu was also quite embarrassed. The big bright wheel treated him sincerely and helped him everywhere. If he destroyed the big bright wheel's rice bowl and forced him to flee for his life, it would be really unfair to him. He smiled awkwardly. To tell you the truth, I went to the endless horizon of the underworld this time, and the Emperor of the Underworld happened to be there. The Red Armor Army invited me to meet the Emperor of the Underworld. To be honest, the Emperor of the Underworld is quite friendly to me. The others rolled their eyes when they heard this. He made it sound like he was a big shot. Wei Chuanxiu sneered and lamented, "You have to believe it. It is all true. But the key is that the token of the Emperor of the Underworld in my hand was accidentally obtained from someone else, not because I am a trusted person of the Emperor of the Underworld." They looked at each other, and Wei Chuanxiu asked in surprise, "In that case, you still dared to take it out to deceive people in Twilight City? Damn it. The army of the Underworld wanted to kill me. I took out the token of the Emperor of the Underworld for the sake of emergency." Yu Qianqiu shook his head and smiled bitterly. "In fact, I didn't know it was the token of the Emperor of the Underworld before I took it out. I only knew that it should be of some help. Nobody would dare to take it out to cause trouble if they knew it was the token of the Emperor of the Underworld. In fact, it was because of this that the Emperor of the Underworld asked the Red Armor Army to interrogate me at the Endless Horizon." They were stunned, not expecting such a thing to happen. "That's strange. Where did you get the token of the Emperor of the Underworld?" Wei Chuanxiu looked up and down at the intact Yu Qianqiu and said, "Since you met the Emperor of the Underworld, did he just let you go?" "It is because he let me go that I feel strange." Yu Qianqiu shrugged at the great bright wheel and said, "There are still many things that I don't understand about this. Do you think I would dare to bring everyone to the netherworld? What if we fall into a wolf's den right after escaping from the tiger's mouth?" Even though he said this to everyone, in reality, he didn't want to easily escape until the last moment. If he didn't run, he would still have a chance if he worked hard, but if he ran, then all his years of hard work in the immortal world would be wasted, and he would have to start from scratch again. The most important thing was that he still had a way out at the critical moment. Even if he wanted to escape, there was no need for him to take the risk of escaping to the netherworld. "Then what do you want to do?" De Mingluan asked. Yu Qianqiu looked into the distance and said with determination, "Isn't it just going to the Celestial Palace? There was nothing to be afraid of. If it really doesn't work, we can just run together. I've already prepared an escape route for everyone. No one can do anything to us." After his experience in the All Heavens boundary, in terms of mentality, the Celestial Palace could no longer give him too much pressure. When they heard this, they looked at each other. They didn't know whether it was true or not. De Mingluan narrowed his eyes and looked at him for a while, then said in a deep voice, "In that case, I have nothing to say. I'll go back and give some instructions. I'll look for you later." With that, he flew away. De Mingluan went to make preparations. Yu Qianqiu, who had just returned and had to rush to the Celestial Palace, naturally had to make some preparations. After having a secret discussion with Wei Chuanxiu and Yun Peng on the rooftop, he quickly went downstairs and hid in a room. He took out the token of authority of the Chamber of Commerce Alliance and the token of passage to the underworld that the great Ming Luan had given him. He held one in each hand and weighed it for a while. Because the token of authority of the Chamber of Commerce Alliance was too obvious, he put it away. As for the Netherworld Passage token, he didn't stand on ceremony. It might be difficult for others to imitate, but it wasn't difficult for him at all. He used Jinju to make dozens of tokens in one go as templates so that he could imitate it when needed. After doing this, he quickly gathered the lords of the various countries to meet in the conference room on the 21st floor. In the end, he found that everyone couldn't resist the temptation in the end. They used elixirs and the Immortal Ascension passage to forcibly raise their cultivation to the early stage of small immortal. In this regard, Yu Qianqiu expressed his understanding. Because a small number of them had already reached the end of their lifespans. Since they couldn't be sure that they would succeed naturally, they could only take a shortcut. When the others saw the cultivation of the people around them skyrocketing, they couldn't remain indifferent. They gritted their teeth and followed suit. After everyone communicated, Yu Qianqiu carefully observed everyone's mental state. He was afraid that everyone would lose control of their emotions if they were cooped up here for too long. Some people would want to leave or go back. However, he didn't find anything out of the ordinary. After thinking about it carefully, he felt relieved. Think about it, a mere few years was really nothing to cultivators. Moreover, the illusory immortal city had cultivation resources that everyone couldn't compare to in the mortal world. As long as it was something that everyone needed for cultivation, the World Chamber of Commerce had never been stingy with everyone. What Yu Qianqiu didn't know, and most importantly, was that the longer everyone stayed in the illusory immortal city, the more they understood how dangerous the outside world was, and the more they understood how tiny they were. Even though they were overlords of an area in the mortal world, in the immortal dimension that was filled with sects like trees in a forest, any ordinary expert from any sect would be able to easily deal with them. With their cultivations, it was impossible for them to stand out in the immortal dimension. Therefore, whether it was in terms of cultivation resources or safety, having the World Chamber of Commerce protect them in the illusory immortal city was really the best. Whether it was the barrenness of the mortal world or the dangers of the outside world, they temporarily didn't consider it. Currently, they had Yu Qianqiu who could provide them with resources. If they didn't make good use of it, they wouldn't be the rulers of the various countries they used to be. When he returned to the rooftop, the great bright wheel was already waiting for him. Yu Qianqiu smiled as he took out the token of the Chamber of Commerce Alliance and the token of passage to the underworld. When the great bright wheel received it, it was silent for a moment before it said, "It seems that these things didn't help you much in the underworld. Because the token of the underworld emperor is more useful than them." Yu Qianqiu smiled. Yun Peng and Wei Chuanxiu, who were at the side, seemed to be sending him off. Wei Chuanxiu looked around and didn't see any movement from the women. She asked thoughtfully, "You're not sure if you'll be lucky or not, aren't you going to say goodbye to them before you leave?" "I've been wandering outside all year round and haven't had time to accompany them. I've already let them down. I'd rather have them complain about me and think that I'm a womanizer than have them worry about me. I can only hope that I can create a future for them with no regrets." Yu Qianqiu shook his head with a wry smile before summoning a flying shuttle and taking the lead to fly into it. The great bright wheel followed closely behind. A stream of light flew far away from the rooftop of the World Chamber of Commerce. It blended into the streams of light that rose and fell in the illusory immortal city and disappeared. The disciples of the various sects who had been secretly watching the World Chamber of Commerce also quietly disappeared. On a day when the sky was filled with rosy clouds, Yu Qianqiu flew towards the main peak of the blissful immortal realm for the first time. There was a majestic palace shining brightly amidst the misty clouds. The two landed in a world made of gold. Relying on a token that shone with golden light, the great bright wheel brought him into the righteous heaven gate, which was guarded by two golden-robed guards. Yu Qianqiu followed behind the great bright wheel and stared dumbfoundedly at the incomparably wide and majestic golden plaza in front of him. The ground was paved with large golden tiles. There were golden pillars, golden towers, golden arched bridges, golden railings, and other things at regular intervals. In addition to the majestic palace that shone with golden light in the distance, this was clearly a golden kingdom, a golden world. Walking in this golden world, the ground was like a glossy yellow mirror that could clearly reflect the people walking on it. Each golden pillar that brushed past was several times thicker than a person, and each golden tile on the ground was several times wider than a bed. Looking around in such a grand atmosphere, it made one feel so insignificant, like an ant climbing on a mountain of gold. This was Jin Tai's immortal palace. Yu Qianqiu was inwardly speechless. If he didn't know that Jin Tai was a gold spirit, just the aura of the immortal palace in front of him would have frightened him. The two walked for more than an hour before arriving at the bottom of a golden flight of steps that increased in height by 100 meters. At the top of the flight of steps was the huge immortal palace that shone with golden light. It made one look up at the mountain and added a sense of oppression. On both sides of the flight of steps, there were halberd-wielding guards at regular intervals. The strict atmosphere was used to guide people. The Great Bright Wheel suddenly raised its hand and the two stopped at the bottom of the flight of steps. On the way here, the Great Bright Wheel had told Yu Qianqiu that normal people were not allowed to use spells to fly within the immortal palace. They could only walk. Yu Qianqiu looked at the flight of steps and was speechless. What kind of rule was this? They had already walked for more than half an hour. Adding on the flight of steps that were hundreds of meters high, wouldn't it be a waste of other people's time? Just as he was thinking, he saw a person who violated the rules. Instead of walking, she directly flashed down from the flight of steps and landed on the lowest step in front of the two of them. The person who came was wearing a golden robe. Not only did she look old, she was actually an old lady with wrinkled skin and white hair. Her eyes were as sharp as an eagle's as she looked at Yu Qianqiu, causing Yu Qianqiu's heart to jump. Someone who could brazenly violate the rules of the immortal palace was naturally not an ordinary person. Yu Qianqiu was muttering the identity of the person who came. The Great Bright Wheel had already secretly warned him, this person is the chief steward of the immortal palace. Her name is Nie Shaoqian. Her son is the commander of internal affairs, He Lai, who controls the immortal palace guards. Both mother and son have high cultivation and can be said to be the two people the immortal emperor trusts the most. After saying this secretly, the Great Bright Wheel quickly cupped his hands and bowed to the person who came. Greetings, Chief Steward Nie. Nie Shaoqian? Her name is Nie Shaoqian? Why isn't her son surnamed Ning? The corner of Yu Qianqiu's mouth couldn't help but twitch. He was quite shocked. This chief steward Nie ignored the Great Bright Wheel and stared at Yu Qianqiu. She asked indifferently, "You are Yu Qianqiu?" Yu Qianqiu hurriedly bowed and said, "Yu Qianqiu greets Chief Steward Nie." Chapter 1075. Nie Shaoqian looked at him for a while and asked, "Are you ready?" This baffling question made Yu Qianqiu stare blankly. After being secretly pointed out by the Great Bright Wheel, he finally understood that Yi Zichen was asking if he had prepared the song for his gift. Immediately, he modestly replied, "I have prepared it, but I am afraid that I cannot present it." Nie Shaoqian didn't ask any more questions. She crushed a jade talisman, and after a while, a beam of light flew over from afar. A middle-aged woman wearing a green veil landed on the ground and walked up to the two. She cupped her hands and said, "Greetings, manager." Yu Qianqiu glanced at her and couldn't help but be curious. After entering the paradise of bliss, everyone he saw was wearing a golden robe. He didn't expect to see a woman dressed in a different style in the immortal palace. He secretly transmitted his voice to the Great Bright Wheel. "Who is this woman?" The Great Bright Wheel, who was standing to the side, replied, "Her name is Qingyang. She is the one who choreographed the dance for the immortal emperor. Because she often dances, she is probably the only person in the immortal palace who doesn't need to wear a golden robe like us." Qingyang. This person is Yu Qianqiu. This is related to the immortal emperor's wedding, so you better help him. Otherwise, he will become the laughing stock of the world. General Manager Nie Shaoqian pouted at Yu Qianqiu. "Right here?" Qingyang coldly looked around. Her words and actions were not as respectful as the Great Bright Wheel to Nie Shaoqian. Nie Shaoqian frowned and said, "The song for the immortal emperor's wedding can only be released to the public on the day of the wedding. Not to mention, his unorthodox song still needs your arrangement. Let's go to your Green Pear Palace to have a look. If he really can't be shown in public, I'll explain to Immortal Empress Wu Ji." Qingmiang didn't say anything. She turned around and flew away like a streak of light. Chief Steward Nye swept a glance at the remaining two and said, "Let's go to Green Pear Palace together." She also transformed into a stream of light and flashed away. The great bright wheel immediately flew after her. At the bottom of the stairs, Yu Qianqiu was at a loss. He then jogged in the direction that they flew in. After running for a short distance, a ray of light shot back. Deming had returned and was floating in the air. He stared down at the ground and asked angrily, "Yu Qianqiu, why are you running here? Damn it! Didn't you say that ordinary people aren't allowed to fly here?" The expression on Yu Qianqiu's face was even more furious than his. Seeing that others could fly while he could only run, it would be strange if he could be happy. Deming Luan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If the head chief says it's okay, then it's okay. What did she say that it was okay? If you don't make things clear, would I dare to take the risk? Yu Qianqiu gritted his teeth. He was too lazy to argue with Deming Luan. He waved his hand and interrupted, "Stop talking nonsense. This isn't a place for you to behave atrociously. Quickly follow me. Don't let the head chief wait for too long." Hearing this, Yu Qianqiu relaxed. Thus, the two of them quickly flew away from this place. After flying out of the Golden World, the two of them headed straight for a mountain peak not far away. On the peak of the mountain, there was a huge ancient palace made of pure wood. On the small square outside the palace, Qingmiang, who looked indistinct and serious, glanced at Yu Qianqiu and said, "Come with me." Yu Qianqiu cautiously glanced at the great bright wheel. When he saw the great bright wheel nod, he quickly followed behind Qingmiang. Deming Luan followed behind head chief steward Nye. Who knew that Qingmiang, who was at the front, would suddenly turn around and say, "The two of you, don't follow us. Especially you, head chief steward. The atmosphere of my Green Pear Palace doesn't match your arrogant manner." After she finished speaking, she turned around and continued to walk into the palace. Following behind her, Yu Qianqiu secretly clicked his tongue. He didn't know what kind of background this woman had. She actually dared to speak to the Golden Emperor's trusted aide, the head chief steward Nye, in such a tone. Stopping, head chief steward Nye had a helpless expression. He turned around to look at Deming Luan and smiled wryly. "My daughter really doesn't give me any face." Yu Qianqiu, who had just stepped into the palace, pricked up his ears. Deming Luan watched as Yu Qianqiu disappeared into the palace. After a moment of silence, she bluntly said, "Head chief steward, forgive me for speaking bluntly. Our loyalty to the Immortal Emperor cannot be forced onto the next generation." Once these treasonous words came out, head chief steward Nye's body shook. Her sharp gaze pierced straight into Deming Luan's calm eyes. A murderous aura lingered around her body. After a long time, she slowly retracted it back into her body. She slightly sighed and said, "Perhaps what you said is right. However, this is the only time. I don't want to hear you say such words in my ears again." Then, her tone changed and she coldly said, "I can see that you are very considerate of this Yu Qianqiu. Head chief steward is wise. I have always been loyal to the Immortal Emperor. The sun and moon can bear witness." Deming Luan slightly bowed towards her. Then, she helplessly said, "I won't hide it from head chief steward. I actually don't have much of a relationship with this Yu Qianqiu. The reason why I take care of him is because we were friends in the past. As long as it doesn't harm the Immortal Palace's interests, please help me a little." Head chief steward Nye's gaze that was full of deep meaning moved away from him. She didn't pursue the matter any further. Instead, she looked at the palace gate of the Green Pear Palace with a sense of loss. Everyone had their own story. Even though she was a high-ranking official, she was no exception. The people outside could not hear any sound from inside the Green Pear Palace. It was clear that there was a soundproof formation inside. About an hour later, Qingmiang's figure flashed out from the palace gate. Deming Luan didn't see Yu Qianqiu. Her eyes couldn't help but slightly narrow as she stared at Qingmiang. "How is it? Is this Yu Qianzhou's item presentable? Head Chief Steward Nia helplessly asked. Qingyang's expression was cold. She didn't directly comment on whether Yu Qianzhou's item was good or bad. She only replied without a smile, help him make some arrangements. When the time comes, it should be able to satisfy the Immortal Emperor and Immortal Empress. Hearing these words, Deming Luan's anxious heart finally relaxed. He knew that since this woman said these words, Yu Qianzhou should be able to pass this hurdle. Head Chief Steward Nia also slightly nodded his head. Then I'll leave this Yu Qianzhou to you. You must bring out something satisfactory on the day of the wedding. I have a request. Qingyang coldly said, I need enough people to accompany the dancers. I also need to create enough instrumental music. The wrinkled Chief Steward Nia didn't hesitate to say, this is not a problem. I will contact the people in charge of manpower and skilled craftsmen. They will do their best to cooperate with you. After receiving the reply, Qingyang didn't say any polite words of thanks. Instead, she turned around with a cold expression and was about to leave. At this time, a golden-robed guard quickly rushed over and bowed to Chief Steward Nia, reporting to Chief Steward. The Immortal Empress heard that Yu Qianzhou is here and wants to see Yu Qianzhou. Everyone present was startled when they heard this, especially Qingyang. She stopped in her tracks and turned back around, frowning as she looked at Chief Steward Nia. The latter seemed to know that she didn't like people to disturb her work. However, no matter what, Ji Wu was now carrying the title of the Immortal Empress. As long as it wasn't an unreasonable request, it wouldn't be easy to refuse. With a straight face, he said, since the Immortal Empress wants to see him, Qingyang. Quickly tell Yu Qianzhou to come out and see the Immortal Empress at the Crystal Palace. Qingyang coldly replied, yes. Her figure flickered as she returned to the palace. Not long after, Yu Qianzhou ran out with a puzzled look on his face. He looked at the great bright wheel with a questioning gaze. It seemed that Qingyang hadn't told him anything. Seeing the confusion on his face, Chief Steward Nia pointed at the guard who came to report and said indifferently, Yu Qianzhou. Immortal Empress Ji Wu wants to see you. Go with her to see her. After that, quickly return to the Green Pear Palace and continue to listen to her orders. Do you understand? Yu Qianzhou was startled. Why did that woman Ji Wu want to see him now? Confused, he cupped his fists and replied, yes. Then, he flew away with the guard. The great bright wheel's eyes also flickered. He didn't know whether it was a good or bad thing for Ji Wu to summon Yu Qianzhou. He frowned and cupped his fists, Chief Steward. If there is nothing else, I will return to the Chamber of Commerce Alliance. Chief Steward Nia nodded and left first. The great bright wheel looked in the direction of the Crystal Palace in the distance, then frowned and turned into a stream of light and flew away. Outside a gate with a tall jade wall, Yu Qianzhou immediately saw the colorful jade palace inside. The guard stopped outside the gate and stretched his hand inside. Don't let the Immortal Empress wait for too long. Quickly go and see her. Thank you. Yu Qianzhou cupped his fists and walked in without any clues on his face. In fact, his mind was spinning quickly. He didn't know if Lu Yanqing and Immortal Crocodile Monarch were here. As soon as he stepped into the palace, he was immediately attracted by a thatched hut not far away. He didn't understand why there was such a strange thatched hut in this place that looked like a crystal palace. The courtyard was empty and desolate, and not a single person could be seen. Just as Yu Qianzhou was wondering why the dignified Immortal Queen's residence did not have a servant, he saw a familiar person walking out of the palace door in front of him. It was none other than Lu Yanqing. Lu Yanqing looked at him with a complicated expression and was stunned for a moment. Then she bowed and led the way into the hall. The Immortal Empress is waiting for you inside. Although there was a smile on Yu Qianzhou's face, there was an unconcealable coldness in his eyes. It was hard for him to have a good impression of this woman who made decisions on her own and made him uncomfortable. When he walked along the jade steps to the door of the hall, he smiled with a slightly sarcastic smile and cupped his fists. Thank you. When Lu Yanqing saw the unforgettable coldness in his eyes, her face couldn't help but turn pale. Her delicate body swayed for a moment, and she turned back and stepped into the hall with her head slightly lowered. After Yu Qianzhou followed her in, he found that the hall was empty. He didn't understand what it meant. He saw Lu Yanqing, who was leading the way, turn into the back hall. He paused for a moment, but finally followed her. Who knew that as soon as he stepped into the rear hall, a large hand would grab the collar behind his neck like a sneak attack. Yu Qianzhou was shocked and quickly dodged while turning his head to look, only to see a black-clothed, silver-haired big man laughing loudly at him. Stinking brat. We finally meet again. Old monster. Yu Qianzhou was pleasantly surprised. Who else could this person be but the immortal crocodile monarch that he had been talking about? Before he landed, he flashed back into the air. The two fellows who had not seen each other for a long time couldn't help but hug each other. Chapter 1076. After pushing each other away, the two of them threw punches at each other, or patted each other's backs. They couldn't help but sigh when they reunited after such a long time. During this time, Yu Qianzhou faintly noticed that the strength of the other party's hands seemed to be a little weaker than before. He remembered that when the other party casually patted him twice, he had to grit his teeth in pain. Now, it was just like that. He didn't think too much about it. It was probably because his cultivation had improved. He smiled and looked up and down. Old monster. How have you been these years? Immortal Crocodile's expression stiffened slightly. He pushed him and waved his hand to change the topic. Let's not just talk about ourselves. You and Sister Ji Wu can be considered old acquaintances. Hurry up and say hello. Yu Qianzhou looked over, and saw Lu Yanqing accompanying a woman with a noble temperament that was even more beautiful than Yu Qianzhou. Her long white dress slid down the jade stairs behind her like flowing water. Her black eyebrows, eyes, nose, and red lips were all shockingly beautiful. This was not the first time he had met this person. If it wasn't immortal monarch Ji Wu, who else could it be? Beautiful. No wonder Jin Dun wanted to marry her. In order to show respect or politeness, Yu Qianzhou stopped his eyes from sliding to the other party's full chest. He smiled bitterly and bowed. Yu Qianzhou greets the immortal empress. Ji Wu's beautiful eyes carefully looked at Yu Qianzhou. Although it wasn't the first time she had met Yu Qianzhou had a head full of braids and his skin was bronze. He was dressed like a barbarian. It was the first time she had seen Yu Qianzhou's original appearance. In the end, she found that it didn't match the elegant and handsome scholar in her mind. She was somewhat disappointed. After a pause, she said faintly, Yu Qianzhou. We meet again. Yu Qianzhou is honored to be able to see you again. Yu Qianzhou's words and actions remained respectful and courteous, but he was actually cursing in his heart. If it wasn't for this woman calling him out, he wouldn't have been tossed here to do such a disgusting thing. Ji Wu didn't seem to like the title, Immortal Empress. She frowned a few times. Immortal Crocodile was also a little unhappy. He frowned and waved his hand. All right. Stop pretending to be refined. I know better than anyone what kind of person you are. Little sister Ji Wu spent a lot of effort to bring you here not to listen to your flattery. Do you know why she brought you here? In any case, it was definitely not something good. Yu Qianzhou's expression did not change. I don't know. Immortal Crocodile chuckled coldly and circled around him until Yu Qianzhou's hair stood on end. He clicked his tongue and said, Kid, you're not simple at all. You actually found a way to come to the immortal realm from the human world and set up a sect in the immortal realm. Are you trying to bully others because they don't know your background? Thank you, Immortal Empress and Brother Crocodile, for keeping my secret, Yu Qianzhou said politely, but in his heart, he was wondering what this guy was trying to do by beating around the bush. It's good that you know. Immortal Crocodile placed his big hands on Yu Qianzhou's shoulders and said sincerely, then shouldn't you express something? Express something? Yu Qianzhou broke away from his hands and asked warily, express what? Immortal Crocodile glanced at Ji Wu, then turned back and said firmly, I won't hide it from you. Little sister Ji Woo didn't want to agree to this wedding at all. It was Lady Jean who threatened her with my life that forced little sister Ji Woo to agree. The two of us have always wanted to escape, but there are many experts in the Paradise Immortal realm. With our strength, we can't escape at all. When we were in the human world, I saw the magic of your teleportation formation, Yu Qianqiu. Please help us this once. Use the teleportation formation to send us back to the human world. How about that? This. Yu Qianqiu secretly glanced at Lu Yanqing and asked secretly, did you tell them the secret of going back and forth to the human world? No. I didn't say a word about this, Lu Yanqing replied quietly. Yu Qianqiu was relieved when he heard this. He smiled bitterly at Immortal Crocodile and said, if you knew this would happen, you wouldn't have come back from the human world. I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you now. There's nothing I can do about this. It wasn't that he didn't want to help, but he didn't dare to. He and Ji Woo didn't have any friendship at all. It was not worthwhile to take risks for her. Although he had some friendship with Immortal Crocodile in the human world, it was built on the basis of mutual benefit. Their relationship had not reached the point where they could reveal any secret. Besides, when he came here, Immortal Crocodile's wife disappeared. If he didn't suspect him, who else could he suspect? If his wife was stolen, no man would agree to it. He was afraid that Jean Tai would dig 3 feet into the ground to find him. Even if he hid in the human world, he might not be safe. In short, saving these two people wouldn't do him any good. Instead, it would cause a lot of trouble. He couldn't waste so many years of effort to save them. It was not worth it. Anyway, Ji Woo wasn't his woman. Whoever she married had nothing to do with him. So he could only refuse. The back hall instantly became frighteningly quiet. Immortal Crocodile's face gradually turned sinister. He sneered and said, I knew you were ruthless and didn't want to cause trouble for the two of us. Since you didn't save us first, don't blame me for being rude. You came from the human world during the war, have the divine sword of the demon lord of 10,000 swords, and are also cultivating the Samadhi true fire. There's no need for me to help you keep it a secret. Ji Woo and Lu Yanqing were shocked. They didn't expect Yu Qianqiu to have the divine sword of the demon lord of 10,000 swords, and he was also cultivating the Samadhi true fire. Are you threatening me? Yu Qianqiu's expression turned cold. Being threatened in such an undisguised manner, the thing that had settled in his bones after many years of tempering inadvertently came out again. At this time, he ignored the people standing here and just narrowed his eyes and sneered, old monster. Be a man with a conscience. If I hadn't saved you too, you would still be trapped in the heaven and earth universe formation. So, I don't owe you anything. If I remember correctly, the two of you promised not to reveal my secret. I didn't expect you to go back on your word. For him, there was no point in pretending now. Whether he saved them or they revealed his secret, the Immortal Palace would not let him go. In that case, why should he be threatened by them and save them? Either way, his hard work would be ruined. If he went back and started from scratch, he might as well leave the two of them to be tortured by Jean Tai. No one would have an easy time. Immortal Crocodile glared at him and was about to flare up, but Ji Woo reached out and stopped him. Ji Woo looked at Yu Qianqiu with surprise. She could see that he wasn't afraid of her at all. She frowned slightly and said, Yu Qianqiu, if you have a way to help us escape, why don't you help us? We will definitely repay you in the future. Repay you in the future? Yu Qianqiu sneered. I think it's better not to. Today, I have seen what it means to go back on your word. How can I expect you to repay me in the future? Lu Yanqing, who was at the side, was secretly shocked. She didn't expect that Yu Qianqiu wasn't even afraid of an intermediate stage Immortal Emperor expert. She understood that it wasn't luck that he was able to get to where he was today. Just this courage and spirit alone wasn't something an ordinary person could compare with. You. Immortal Crocodile, who was about to flare up again, was stopped by Ji Woo's brother Crocodile. Ji Woo stared at Yu Qianqiu, who was standing expressionlessly. After hesitating for a while, she bit her lip and said slowly, Yu Qianqiu. As long as you save us, I am willing to be your woman. Although her face was still cold, there was already a faint redness under her pink skin. It took a lot of courage to say such words. As soon as she said this, everyone thought they heard wrong. However, she said it word by word, so it was difficult to mishear. In an instant, the entire palace was so quiet that even ants could be heard. Yu Qianqiu, who was acting like a dog that didn't eat shit, choked. His mouth opened so wide that a fist could fit in it. His domineering and arrogant aura had all gone to hell. His current image was no different from that of a fool. Immortal Crocodile reacted and immediately said anxiously, This kid and Jean Tai are not good people. Being his woman is the same as falling out of the tiger's den into the wolf's den. At most, we will just die. Sister, why do you have to humiliate yourself like this? Ji Wu ignored him at this time. She was going all out, but Yu Qianqiu did not answer. As a top beauty who had always been high and mighty, it hurt her self-esteem a little. She immediately said with a frosty face, Yu Qianqiu. Do you think this is not good enough, or do you think my cultivation and looks are not good enough for you? Yu Qianqiu was stunned by her roar. He didn't understand what she was doing. He smiled bitterly and said, I am good enough, I am good enough. I am not good enough for you. I, Yu Qianqiu, am not even good enough to carry your shoes, cut the crap. Ji Wu waved her hand and interrupted him. She was embarrassed and angry. She said sternly, So you agree? Kid, how dare you? Immortal Crocodile pointed at Yu Qianqiu and shouted angrily, If you dare to take advantage of me, I will fight you to the death. I say, the two of you, please spare me. Yu Qianqiu gave in and bowed to the two of them. It's not that I don't want to help the two of you, but I really can't do anything. The treasures I set up the teleportation array are used up. The two of you must have heard about my master challenging the Emperor of the Underworld and about me going to the Underworld. In fact, I wanted to go to the Underworld to find my master and ask for more treasures. Unfortunately, I didn't find my master. Otherwise, how could I not save him? It wasn't that he didn't like beauties, especially a great beauty like Ji Wu, but he was not the kind of person who would lose his mind at the sight of a beautiful woman. No matter how beautiful Ji Wu was, to him, she was still an outsider who he didn't know. He would not trade the future of a group of women in his family. Lu Yanqing looked at him in surprise. Ji Wu's beauty made her heart beat faster. She didn't expect Yu Qianqiu to be so indifferent. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.